Do you feel like people are always manipulating you? Manipulation is a powerful tool, and it's not always easy to spot a manipulator. Learn how to analyze people and master human behavior so you can spot a manipulator from a mile away. Hello, this is Vincent McDaniel, and you are listening to Dark Psychology. Discover how to analyze people and master human manipulation using body language secrets, Covert, NLP, mind control, subliminal persuasion, hypnosis, and speed reading techniques. Provided to you by United Audiobooks. I hope you enjoy my audiobook. Now, let us begin. Introduction. In 1874, German physiologist Wilhelm Wundt published a manuscript. It outlined the connection between the human mind and the body's reactions to sensations, emotions, and beliefs. He titled it Principles of Physiological Psychology. This manuscript laid the foundation for future researchers studying thought and the human mind. This research path became its own branch of science, psychology. Psychology now uses myriad treatment methods based on different researchers' perspectives. For this book, we will discuss one specific type called dark psychology. The concept of dark psychology arose when the dark triad of human traits became a widespread topic. We can find this dark triad of personality traits in nearly everybody. However, the combination of psychopathy, narcissism, and Machiavellianism make up the most complete model of what we know as a bad person in its rawest and simplest form. Everyone shows signs of at least one of these traits, but they are staples for manipulative and malevolent people. The most prevalent research on these dark three traits is in criminal or deviant psychology. When these dark psychological qualities became associated with deviance or criminal behavior, researchers conducted more studies on what made some people deviant and some psychology dark. Dark psychology ultimately comes from methods used to manipulate people into following the path laid out by another. Unfortunately, there's no way for you to magically get what you want from others. You can make your chances of success with certain people higher by using some of these methods, but there's no 100% success rate. There will always be some things you have to take the long way to get. These methods are not shortcuts. There are situations where people try to use these methods to get information or a favor out of you. Reading this book will make those methods or tricks less likely to work on you. They are ways for you to protect yourself from that same manipulation. By understanding more about the dark triad of personality traits, in particular, you'll spot people with these traits easily, and you'll avoid potentially dangerous or toxic people before it's too late. In 2006, Michael Nusatelli published an analysis of the more malevolent aspect of the human condition, titled Dark Side of the Human Consciousness Concepts. Nusatelli asserted that all humans have the ability and even the motivation to harm or victimize others. This motivation is often an attempt to gain power over others or a situation in their life. While most people don't act on these impulses, a small percentage of people that feel the desire to abuse others will do so based on a craving for power. This power can be physical, emotional, or spiritual. Humans, acting under Nusatelli's understanding of dark psychology, rarely act on malicious impulses no matter how deviant they are. Humans more naturally do good things rather than malevolent or evil things. Only 1% of people commit acts of harm to others to fulfill this feeling of malice. When people do malevolent things purely for the sake of inflicting physical or emotional harm on others, Nusatelli implies they're acting as an outlier to the majority of humanity. While most psychology serves the purpose of helping others, the main directive for dark psychology is to help yourself better understand people so you can avoid negative ones and use mind tools to get what you want. You can also use dark psychology for your benefit without turning it into a weapon. So, dark psychology is not the art of being evil or malicious. Dark psychology is simply an aspect of psychology wherein not everything serves the purpose of better understanding your own mind and alleviating negative feelings. This book will teach you everything you need to know about the intricacies of dark psychology, ranging from understanding body language to how to manipulate others. Some persuasion is relatively harmless and benefits everyone involved. Other kinds of manipulation and mind control are entirely selfish, seeking to do nothing but benefit the manipulator. Focusing on a wide range of techniques and skills, you will learn the steps involved for taking over the mind of another person, but also the importance of ethics when doing so. When you understand that fine line between ethical and unethical, you can protect yourself and influence others for the good of all. Chapter 1: Understanding Dark Psychology. Psychology, at its root, is relatively simple to define. It is the scientific study of the mind. It covers several different areas: relationships, behavior, thought processes, and more. When you study psychology, you are looking for the why and how of any mental human process. This includes neurobiological processes, such as what happens within the brain when it is actively controlling the body, or why that 5-year-old child at the grocery store had a massive meltdown when told they couldn't have candy. Psychology studies what we do, what drives us, and what causes us problems. It explains emotions and how they function and aid human action. It explains why some people give in to pressure, but others do not. It explains why empathy is so important. Psychology studies all of that and more, but essentially, it is the study of who we are as individuals and as a species. Psychology exists in several different classifications. Some people are only interested in the physical aspects, neurobiology, while others care about mental and emotional development, therapy, self-help, etc. And others are still interested in the divergence between typical psychological development and the development of people who are a challenge to society's norms. Psychology has several uses, both practical and theoretical. If you understand human psychology, you can predict how people will behave. By knowing people's tendencies, you can accurately assess a situation and learn how to use those tendencies to your own benefit. Dark psychology. Dark psychology is the study of how people with dark triad personality types interact with the world around them. It looks at how those people view, interact with, and manipulate others. Using dark psychology is controversial because of the distress it can cause the other party. Because so many that study dark psychology use it without concern for how it may hurt others. Dark psychology has developed a bad reputation. It is important to note, however, that dark psychology is simply another viewpoint for interacting with the world. It is not inherently evil or wrong. It is what it is, a tool set. This tool set could be wielded in harmful ways, but even a dinner fork could be used as a weapon if the intent is there. You cannot disregard dark psychology altogether simply because some people choose to use it as a weapon. The following chapters will guide you through dark psychology, basics, and the mindset. You will be shown how to think about the world as if you were an individual with a dark triad personality. You will be shown a glimpse into the darkness that fills such an individual's mind. Unlike those with the dark triad personality types, however, you do not have to give in to temptation. You can learn how dark psychology works without ever deciding to use it. Dark psychology focuses on using influence, persuasion, and NLP, Neuro-Linguistic programming, to control others. It seeks to get what the user wants at all cost. However, what if someone with no interest in manipulation were to wield this tool? What if they didn't use dark psychology in harmful ways, but to help people break free of anything that is holding them down? A person could use it to convince a friend that they must break up with their abusive partner. Or a doctor might use it to encourage someone to seek proper treatment for a tumor that will be fatal if not operated on quickly. One could use it to negotiate a promotion because their numbers have been so good. Ultimately, dark psychology does not have to be evil or wrong. It is neutral until someone decides to pick up the tool and use it. The Dark Triad. The Dark Triad refers to a specific set of personality traits: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Each of these traits can be detrimental to relating on a socially meaningful level because of the implications that come with them. These personality types are referred to as dark because they have a tendency towards malevolence. Each of these types of people struggles in their daily interactions. They are also at an increased risk of antisocial behavior and have a greater tendency to commit crimes. These people usually struggle with empathy and are often negative and disagreeable. Narcissism. A narcissist is someone suffering from narcissistic personality disorder, NPD. This person is entirely consumed by grandiosity and egotism. Their lack of empathy makes it impossible to relate to other people. Narcissists believe they are the greatest person in the world and are quite entitled and dominant, though those qualities are never earned in the way that most people do. Machiavellianism. Machiavellianism personality types are cynical. This is only in the sense that they must protect themselves at all cost, rather than viewing the world through a skeptical lens. These people feel they must manipulate others to succeed. Usually, these people struggle with agreeableness and conscientiousness. Those who rank highly in Machiavellianism often tend to score high in psychopathy as well. Psychopathy. The last of the three dark triad personality types is psychopathy. This is typically the most malignant of the three. The psychopath struggles with empathy and has a high level of impulsivity and thrill-seeking. Why use dark psychology? There are several reasons to use dark psychology, and not all are bad. People throughout society use these techniques not to hurt others, but to make sure that they can get the results they need. Leaders may wield the tools like influence and persuasion to keep people motivated. Public speakers may fiddle with the mood in a room to convey a certain message. Police officers may use it to get people to stay in line. No matter who is using it, there is generally a purpose, even if that purpose turns out to be simply for entertainment. Now, let's go over a list of several ordinary uses of dark psychology that you have probably encountered at one time or another. Attorneys. Attorneys often use dark psychology techniques when desperate for a win. They may get so caught up in trying to win that they will use manipulation or dark persuasion to guarantee that result. Leaders and managers. People in any sort of leadership position sometimes use dark methods to keep people in line. They do not care about protecting their image. They simply want results, which involves complete compliance, no matter how it is attained. Politicians. Like attorneys, politicians use dark methods to convince others to side with them. They may appeal to emotions or try to sidestep attempts to present facts in favor of appealing to the crowd's emotions. Politicians that only care about votes are likely to use any means possible to get them. Public speakers or activists. Sometimes public speakers manipulate the emotional state in the room to get better results. They will show people pictures of starving children in Africa, knowing they are more likely to donate if they already feel guilty. Sales. Salespeople are often reliant on the commissions they get from closing sales. They become so determined to keep their job or pay their bills that they may use dark psychology techniques to get what they want or need. They may use neuro-linguistic programming or dark persuasion techniques to hook the other party. I hope you are enjoying my audiobook so far.
It would be a pleasure if you could let me know how you are feeling about this audiobook in the comments section below. We would greatly appreciate it if you could also like this video and subscribe to United Audiobooks to have access to more best-selling audiobooks in the future. Also, please, if you are interested in getting more free audiobooks, please click the first link in the description below. Now, let us carry on with the next chapter.
Chapter 2: How Dark Psychology Works. The goal here is to increase self-awareness, develop a standard change in one's truth for the better, and help motivate others to embark on the same path of discovery. This process reduces the possibility of giving in to the temptations of dark psychology. If you have been a victim or target of a manipulator, don't feel ashamed. We all experience some kind of victimization in our lives. This chapter explains the essential 6 principles that you will need to understand dark psychology. 1. Darkness is a universal part of the human condition. It is sustained by people and the societies they live in. The most kind-hearted individuals still have an inclination toward manipulation and wickedness, but they never act on it because they have fewer violent ideas and sensations. 2. Dark psychology is the study of the human condition as it relates to people's thoughts, feelings, and assumptions about their ability to prey on others for no obvious reasons. Considering that all behavior is purposeful, goal-orientated, and devised using focused techniques, dark psychology says that the closer an individual gets to the black hole of beautiful wickedness, the less likely they have a purpose that motivates them. It is presumed that pure evil is never reached because it is infinite. However, dark psychology also says that some have come close. 3. The context for dark psychology is loaded with examples of this undetected inclination manifesting as active, harmful habits. Modern psychiatry defines the psychotic as a predator lacking remorse for his activities. Dark psychology says there is a continuum of intensity ranging from thoughts and feelings of violence to extreme physical abuse without a practical objective or incentive. 4. In this continuity, the severity of the effects of dark psychology use is not greater or lesser because of actions done to the victims. A straightforward comparison would be Ted Bundy versus Jeffrey Dahmer. Both were extreme psychopaths who committed atrocities. The difference between them is that Dahmer committed his terrible murders in his delusional demand for friendship, while Bundy committed his murders from a place of demented wickedness. Both would be at the farther end of the dark continuum, yet Jeffrey Dahmer is better recognized due to his desperate need to be adored. 5. The dark psychology philosophy is that all people have the potential for physical violence. This potential is innate, and different interior and external variables raise the probability that this potential will manifest into unstable habits. These habits are predatory. At times, they can function without consideration. Humans, according to dark psychology, fall into the predator-prey dynamic. Dark psychology is entirely a human phenomenon and is shared by no other living being. Physical violence and even chaos exist in various other living organisms, but humankind is the only organism that commits violence without purpose. 6. Understanding the underlying reasons and psychological triggers of dark psychology would better allow our culture to recognize, identify, and reduce the dangers inherent in its influence. Learning dark psychology has double the benefit. First, accepting that most of us have this possibility for evil allows those with this expertise to reduce the probability of it arising in themselves and others. Second, comprehending the tenets of dark psychology fulfills the transformative aim of making it through daily life. Most of us have a dark side. It is part of the human condition, but it is not well recognized. The uncomfortable reality is that dark psychology lurks on the outskirts of our consciousness, patiently waiting to strike. As previously stated, It encompasses all manner of terrible and violent habits. Mindless cruelty to animals is a prime example of this. Pet abuse is both vicious and psychopathic. As recent studies have suggested, animal cruelty is associated with a higher probability of committing violence against humans. On the more benign end of the dark psychology spectrum is the increasing levels of violence in video games that children crave. Destruction and a child's desire to play computer games depicting overt violence are explicit examples of this universal human attribute. The vast majority of humankind denies the existence of this particular trait, yet these attributes silently hide beneath the surface in everyone. This propensity for violence and cruelty pervades our society. Since the beginning of recorded history, wrongs committed by one human against another have occurred randomly and without reason. Countless examples of these wrongdoings weave in and out of the tapestry of our existence. The Holocaust during World War II is a prime example. Even now, ethnic cleansing is taking place in neighboring countries. Cases abound with the after effects of what these dark deeds have caused. Although horrifying, it is incredible how decent people can commit or enable such acts of cruelty and violence. Some cultures attribute the presence of evil forces as the cause of malicious activities. Some religions ascribe it to an entity they call Satan. However, it is by examining the nature of the dark triad that we understand how a normal, well-socialized person ends up making a choice that is considered malicious. As explained above, the causes and effects that dark psychology examines are alive and well, and require in-depth scrutiny. As you continue to discover the tenets and foundations of dark psychology, you will establish a cognitive framework of comprehension. Dark continuum. A crucial element in understanding the dark side of humanity is the dark continuum. You can visualize this continuum as either a line or concentric circles where all deviance and vicious habits are measured. The dark continuum includes thoughts, feelings, assumptions, and actions experienced or done by humans. The continuum varies from mild to severe, as well as from purposeful to pointless. Physical manifestations of dark psychology are more severe and located at one end of the dark continuum. Emotional presentations of dark psychology lie at the other end of the continuum. The dark continuum is not a scale of intensity, ranging from poor to worse, but it does specify types of abuse. Once you understand the dark continuum, you will have a theoretical framework depicting all forms of dark psychology ranging from moderate and purposeful to extreme and purposeless. Dark element. The dark element is the realm or location of dark potential that exists in all of us. It refers to the inherent darkness in human nature. This is one of the more esoteric parts of dark psychology because it is difficult to observe. An element, according to an online definition, is anything that contributes causally to an outcome, such as a number of factors that are used to solve a problem. This section will try to explain how the dark element appears as an equation. The dark element is not a mathematical formula, but a theoretical one. It is a collection of occasions that a person experiences that enhances their probability of participating in predatory habits. Although a research study has suggested that youngsters who mature in violent homes become abusers themselves, this does not mean that all mistreated children grow up to be violent offenders. This is merely one element of a wide range of experiences and scenarios that contribute to the dark element. The number of components that are involved in the dark element equation is enormous. It is not the number of factors that cause the dark element to become extreme. Rather, it is the impact those experiences have on an individual's subjective processing that makes the dark element dangerous. Some of these elements are genes, emotional intelligence, peer acceptance, personal handling, developmental turning points, and other experiences. Dark singularity. A dark singularity is an academic principle comparable to the interpretation of a singularity in the middle of a black hole. It is defined as using astronomy and cosmology as analogies. In astrophysics, the singularity is the outright center of a black hole that is infinitesimal, yet so thick in mass that its gravitational pull becomes infinite. A black hole is the massive expanse of space bordering the singularity that has become a massive gravitational pull. Therefore, light cannot escape its grip. According to the theory, the singularity is so dense and powerful that modern laws of physics and their mathematical equations become integrated. At the center of the Milky Way is an all-powerful great void with a considerably small singularity, chock full of incredible energy. The dark singularity, as it refers to dark psychology, is the absolute center of the dark psychology world. Simply put, the dark singularity is constructed from immaculate evil and pure, unadulterated malevolence. Likewise, part of the human condition is this dark singularity is a deep and minuscule root of great hostility and selfishness that no person ever reaches. The person who comes closest to this is the extreme and innovative psychotic who preys on others with little to no objective or motivation for his activities. The core of dark singularity is best described as predators that victimize without purpose. The closer a person approaches the dark singularity, the more horrendous and sinister their actions become. At the same time, their method becomes less deliberate. But because all behavior is purposeful, the dark singularity is an ideal destination that is never reached. Chapter 3: Dark Psychology Tactics. Dark Persuasion. Dark persuasion is another branch of dark psychology. It is the technique by which another person's communication impacts an individual's attitude or behavior without coercion. Dark persuasion is effective, and so it is used often. So, what are the principles of dark persuasion? The first is brainwashing. Brainwashing is the practice of taking over someone else's capacity to think. Naturally, we all have unique thinking patterns and the power to think critically about what is going on around us. Brainwashing takes this power away, and it puts that power into the hands of whoever is doing the brainwashing. Brainwashing has a variety of methods for implementation, but the principle remains the same throughout. A person is first brought into the fold of the new environment. They are told that they matter, are worthy, and have a place within the particular group, organization, relationship, etc. They must be separated from the outside society to do this. The brainwashed person must be convinced that this new way of thinking is a way to live better and happier. There is often a person at the center of this brainwashing who is preferred as wise or intelligent. This person will be the cult leader, and the person who is being brainwashed will think of this person as their new family head. To make sure that the person accepts and adapts to this new situation, their sense of self must be broken down. In cults, this will often already have happened when the person joins. Cults look for people weakened by loneliness, suffering, or isolation. When a person has a good sense of self, they are less susceptible to being brainwashed. Thus, this must be attacked and broken down to convince a person that this new way of living is the best. Brainwashing might also employ guilt to convince a person that they are in the best environment. Brainwashed people may feel guilt and shame about their past lives and will leap at the chance to get rid of these extreme negative emotions. Brainwashers know this and will take advantage of this person's state of mind, presenting them with absolution for their guilt. This creates the possibility of salvation by accepting the brainwasher's new ideas and methodology. Leniency is presented to the person. They are told that they end this negative state of mind if they reach the goals their brainwasher sets for them. This feels good and is hard to ignore. Another form of persuasion is hypnosis. Hypnosis works on a few basic principles. The first is induction. Induction is where a person is placed in a state of suggestibility or relaxation. This state makes them vulnerable to subliminal messaging. The person who is being hypnotized is welcomed into this suggestible state where they can be convinced of a particular set of ideas. Some people seek out hypnosis to quit bad habits, like smoking or other addictions. In this format, the person will go through the initial induction process, and then the hypnotist will make suggestions to them about how to quit smoking or relating to why they shouldn't smoke anymore. The hypnotist formula will include statements like, "You don't need to smoke," "You don't have cravings," "You don't have the social need to smoke." A hypnotist might use positive messaging that might include positive feelings about the person's self or the world. There are subtle suggestions that could push a person towards any goal. The military application of this process is pretty well known. Initially, the soon-to-be soldiers enter boot camp with their heads still in the outside world. Their goals are not formulated yet, and they are used to the comforts and privacy of home. They must be broken down first. Boot camp accomplishes this by putting them through rigorous physical training and emotional damage to accept the messaging of their new situation. The first realization that new recruits have is that everything is out of their control. They are thrust into a world where they are told they are not safe. They are given the message that they are powerless and the world is against them. They learn that they are worthless, their personal feelings invalid. Nothing matters except to achieve whatever goal they are given. Most importantly, they can trust no one except their fellow soldiers. This is how hypnosis works in military brainwashing. The first phase, physically exhausting them, teaching them they have no control, works as the breaking down, also known as the induction or suggestibility stage of the mind. They are taught they are worthless unless they are working toward the greater good. Then the possibility of salvation is offered. In the case of the military, what will save them is working hard, being tough, bonding, and working cohesively with their colleagues. Their fellow soldiers and the commanding officers are their family and only friends. This ultimately creates a cohesive, well-working unit of people who believe that they can only function in this brutal environment. They get through these awful conditions because they rely on each other and only each other. Once they are finished with boot camp, they receive a short respite. This is the commanding officer's way of praising and reinforcing this new dynamic. This is an excellent illustration of dark psychology in action. The military has these principles nailed down to a well-oiled machine. From car dealerships to governmental organizations to interpersonal relationships, dark persuasion tactics are something you should always be on the lookout for. It takes some self-knowledge and exploration, but you'll unmask a dark persuader if you practice this. To do this, you must first learn about your responses in certain situations. When you go into a sales situation, you should recount your goals before entering and try to center yourself. Then, as you engage with the salesperson, you should try and recognize your responses to any challenges that arise. The salesperson might try to tell you what you want. They will tell you, quite literally, that you want something that they have, even if it is something that you don't need or want. This is classic dark persuasion. It takes major willpower to say, "No, I don't want that." Persuasive people can be tough to resist. When the dealer pressures you, try to see how you feel in your body at that moment. Are you feeling grounded? If not, try and remember that you have 2 feet on the floor and you are standing on solid ground. You are strong and settled in your position. Another way to maintain groundedness is to relax. When you allow stress to manifest in your body, you allow yourself to become ungrounded and uncensored, leading to a weaker position. People in a weakened state are more easily persuaded. People who are grounded, strong, and centered are not easily persuaded of things they don't believe in. Why is this? Because human relationships and cognition are similar to gravitational pull. A planet or any large mass in outer space has a gravitational force that will pull objects into its orbit. They will then be locked into orbit with the planet, connected to it in a sense. This is similar to human spirits. We are all floating around, getting sucked into gravitational pull of others with strong personalities. Before you know it, you are connected to them, stuck. Remaining centered and grounded keeps you from being pulled into the gravity of others. This happens a lot with people who lose their family or friends. Left without a support system, you are easily susceptible to persuasive techniques and mind tricks. Make sure you have a strong support system to help you out if you feel that you are going up against someone using dark manipulation tactics. Another critical aspect of protecting yourself from persuasion is confidence. Confidence is something that goes against all principles of dark persuasion. A manipulator is looking for people who have no clear sense of self, the people who have trouble answering the question, "Who are you?" Someone using nebulous persuasion techniques is not counting on meeting someone confident, educated, and with that clear sense of self. If you have confidence in yourself when facing someone trying to persuade you, you are more likely to come away from the encounter intact than someone who is not confident. Intuition. Intuition is critical. Intuition is key to noticing these techniques when they are being used against you. Sometimes it's difficult to tell who uses dark persuasion techniques, whether for their personal goals, those of an organization, or some other reason. Intuition is trusting yourself to see into someone else's intentions, into their very soul. We all have that capacity, and in fact, we can all read people's minds. It is something that people rarely recognize and even less often develop and embrace. Yet, if you learn how to use your intuition and trust in it, it can save you from being taken advantage of. Let's say you are seeking a job in sales. You are taken to a group interview where you must convince the manager that you are suitable for the job. Group interviews are very challenging, and you don't want to go through this process, but you need the money, so you try. You do well in the group interview, and you are selected for the sales team. Now you begin training, and you notice something is off. When you watch the training videos, you see that some of them tend to belittle the trainees and their past. You notice that other members of your training group accept this denigration. They trust that this job is respectable, that the company's higher-ups are right to shame them for anything that came before it. Management then assures you this job is the only job you'll get, so you had better not quit. Then you are told how incredible the benefits are and that you might make a fortune if you work hard and follow the company's philosophy and ethos. Each of these things makes you feel more and more uncomfortable. That is intuition warning you. Pay attention. Your intuition will recognize these persuasion tactics as nefarious because humans have a natural sense of self-preservation. We've evolved to protect ourselves in the wild. Before humans developed an agricultural system and modern civilization, we had to defend ourselves from the elements. People had no control over nature. There was no science explaining the weather or what it would do next. No books to read about world history. An earthquake is scary for most people, but even a basic thunderstorm was seen as a terrifying and mysterious event. Humans were also in constant danger of being eaten by the local fauna. Through millennia of living in the wild, prehistoric humans developed an evolutionary capacity for intuition. Intuition is not thinking or cognition, nor is it a feeling. It is somewhere in between. It is a gut instinct that tells you when you are in danger. As we moved from the forest and caves of the wild to cities and towns, our intuition adapted with us. Now intuition serves us in social situations as well. Maybe you saw a slight smile in the corner of your companion's mouth that doesn't feel right, or the story they're telling doesn't add up. The same feeling of dread from knowing a saber-toothed tiger was near now tells us the person we're with or the situation we're in is toxic. It can also tell you when something is good and you should jump in with your whole heart, such as true love. Intuition has the potential to protect us when someone uses dark persuasion techniques against us. Learning to tune into intuition is difficult for most people, but it is worth the effort. Another essential part of defending yourself from dark persuasion tactics is learn how to say no. There are many ways to do this. Sometimes saying no is putting the answer off. This is called the delay tactic or delay method. The delay method is an excellent tactic to defend yourself from dark persuasion because many shady persuasion tactics rely on a person being pressured in the heat of the moment. However, if you say, "Give me some time to think about it," you are allowing yourself some time away from that pressure. Getting to a better environment will foster relaxation and calmness, so you can deepen your thinking. This allows you to consider your options and whether you are being manipulated for some purposes that are not in your best interest. You will inevitably make a better decision regarding the situation at hand. This works especially well in situations that involve sales or personal relationships. This is just one form of saying no. Saying no in all different forms can save you from being put through the grinder. Machiavellianism as a defense mechanism. Another thing to consider is using Machiavellian principles to defend yourself. This is not the mindset one uses when helping people, and there are many situations where it is better not to adopt a Machiavellian attitude, such as when you need to provide support for others or already trust the person you encounter. In that case, the Machiavellian mindset is not appropriate. However, when dealing with manipulative people who do not have your best interest in mind, you can rely on this mindset to defend yourself. The Machiavellian mindset is, at its core, selfishness. Most people think of selfishness as a negative thing. However, it would help to reframe this. Selfishness is an essential human trait, one that has helped us survive as a species. It is part of the same evolution that developed our intuition. For some people, being a giver and a helper is so ingrained that standing up for themselves is very foreign. Maybe this is true for you. Try asking yourself what is best for you at that moment, whether it lets the other person down or not. You needn't try to harm others. Simply ask if this situation serves you. Ask if whether what is being presented brings you closer or further away from your personal goals. Remember that this person is trying to manipulate you, whether conscious or not. This makes them your foe at that moment. It is you against them. Your foe in this battle does not deserve your help or kindness. It is kill or be killed. You are the one who deserves support and service from yourself. Do not give them an inch. So, to defend yourself, you must become selfish. You will have to switch over from the mindset of a helper, in this case, a pushover, to someone who wants to help themselves. This technique is not something you should employ all the time, by any means, but you should use selfishness carefully and when appropriate. Understand the motive. When you notice that you are being manipulated or persuaded, it helps to examine the motivation for the manipulator. If someone tries to convince you to do something, you should first investigate the possibility of monetary gain for that person. If a business solicits you for your patronage, ask yourself if you need those services, whether your life is better off with or without them. Are they worth your time and money? In the case of a charitable organization, do some research into them. Do they do as they say? Are they trustworthy? People may have other reasons for trying to manipulate you. Many people are subjected to scams that collect information about what you do online or other activities. Why is this information valuable? Because it helps disreputable companies and individuals target people for their services and manipulation. Remember, if the situation is not equitable, you are probably being manipulated. To unmask the dark persuader, you should consider why entering into some agreement benefits the other person, and if those benefits are one-sided. Get to the root of things. Human psychology is such that we are inclined to ignore the deeper levels of a situation in order to survive. The will to survive is ingrained in human consciousness. We have all kinds of automatic responses and habit patterns that we do not question. We are not aware of them. They are simply parts of our lives. That lack of awareness can hurt us. So, to develop critical thinking and problem skills, we have to learn how to get to the root of things. Neglecting to look beyond the surface level of any situation is like treating the surface of a deep wound. If you do not clean out the wound, material left behind can fester and turn into an infection, which can lead to worse conditions. Sounds dramatic. Think about the last time you had to deal with the fallout of not looking too deep into a situation. Did it get dramatic? This will take some introspection as you try to break down the repression and suppression of thoughts and feelings that have built up. This is not uncommon. Many people have repressed memories, feelings, and desires they never contemplate or even become aware of. It takes bravery to look inside the soul. This is our goal, ultimately, to look inside the soul. This requires us to not get distracted by petty or unreasonable desires. To understand our personal and interpersonal problems from a more nuanced position, we must detach from emotion and look at ourselves with pure reason. We must ask ourselves, what are the underlying causes? This will be easier for some than others. Let's look at an example. Ben is an intelligent kid, and he has a great head on his shoulders. However, he has developed some behavioral problems. He has developed a pattern of befriending troublemakers. Ben and his friends disrupt class, distract other students, and vandalize parts of the school, for which they are never caught. Ben is not a bad kid. He likes adventure, and these activities provide him with a sense of challenge and excitement. He engages in a variety of rule-breaking activities and uses his clever mind to get away with them. The teachers think that if they use behavioral modification to punish the boy for bad behavior, he will learn the rules and avoid the behaviors. They punish him for distracting others. Ben is given detention every week for 3 months straight. They tell Ben to stay away from these friends because they are a terrible influence on him. What they are unaware of, or simply ignoring, is that Ben has family troubles at home and doesn't have the stability he needs. He doesn't feel grounded in his family life and cannot be the successful student he wishes to be. The problem is not symptomatic behaviors that result. It is the strain of a difficult and chaotic home life. If the teachers helped him deal with the stressors involved with his family life, it is likely that he would focus more on school. If you are easily manipulated, you could be convinced that Ben's problems are whatever his teachers say they are. Some teachers act in good faith and simply misunderstand the situation. Still, some teachers can be manipulative, telling parents lies because they want to ignore the issue. Maybe this is because it is not their job to deal with the personal lives of their students. Maybe they want to do the least amount of work possible. The sad truth is that people will try to get in your way. They will lie and manipulate to get what they want. This is, at best, deeply frustrating and, at worst, toxic and destructive. The emotions brought on by this kind of behavior make it even harder to think critically. So, you must detach from emotion and be a neural observer. Persistence requires knowledge to back up your claims, and it requires confidence in your actions and confidence in yourself as a person. These qualities can come from many places. Some parents like to encourage their kids to get involved in sports. Athletic training can provide strategies and techniques for becoming a persistent, confident person. What happens if you run into Stacy in accounting and she disagrees with the perfectly reasonable deadline that you have set? You must get to the root of the problem first and take into account all of the available information. This could be past experiences with Stacy. It could be files that you have that she has met deadlines on in the past or emails she has recently sent to you. Whatever data you have to gather, make sure you have compiled it and maintained an awareness of all the information you already have. Using critical thinking skills is important. You must cut through the nonsense to get to the essence of a problem. It also helps if you remain open to the possibility that the solution you're seeking is right under your nose. Use that intuition. If you combine instincts with reason, you can solve problems at the deepest level. Chapter 4: Free Goodwill. Individuals who help others without expecting anything in return have greater levels of satisfaction, live longer lives, and earn more wealth. There are some individuals in our world who stand out from the crowd. You just couldn't put your hand on exactly what it is, but you understand they have a particular understanding of how to acquire exactly what they were trying to achieve from whoever they were speaking with. With technological advancements and the expansion of multimedia that has penetrated our lives, every individual is filled with knowledge like no other man in history. Every action, every transaction, or each behavior is influenced by information. It occurs on an unconscious level. To be successful in such a society, one must comprehend these aspects and apply them in both daily and professional lifestyles. Understanding how to affect the decisions of others is a vital skill to have today in order to be distinct from the rest. Remember that information is power, yet regrettably, the topic of manipulation has yet to be thoroughly explored. People aren't discussing it adequately, which gives the bad guys an edge. Take charge and defend yourself as well as your family and friends from manipulators, or anybody who takes advantage of your perceived weaknesses. I'd like to express an appeal on behalf of somebody you do not even know, and it's unlikely you ever will. They could be someone just like you, or someone like you in the past, less knowledge, eager to help society, looking for information but unsure where to look, which is why you step in. By reading this book, I hope you have gained some fundamental truths about the art of dark psychology. I also hope that you will use this new knowledge to plan your actions so that you can once again take control of your life and leave behind the emotional burden once and for all. If you're finding this book useful so far, could you kindly take a few moments right now to provide an honest review of its contents? You will help one more person to change their lifestyle, one more individual to be able to relate at work with others, one more person experience a transformation they would not have experienced otherwise, change one more life for the better of society. All you need to do in order to make this a reality is leave an honest review, which will take less than 60 seconds. P.S. You are my type of individual if you feel it is good to assist even an unknown person. I'm therefore even more thrilled to keep helping you conquer your worries in the following chapters. You will appreciate the strategies I'm about to cover. PPS, Life Hack. When you introduce somebody to something of value, they will associate that value with you. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you, Vincent. Chapter 5: Psychological Manipulation Techniques. Manipulators who have been in the game for a long time use advanced control methods that yield better outcomes. With practice, you can improve your ability to recognize these methods and use them to your advantage in your daily life. A portion of the advanced control methods incorporates indoctrination, hypnosis, and neuro-linguistic programming, NLP procedures. The use of these methods is portrayed in the sections below, complete with tips on the best ways to protect against falling victim to the same. Brainwashing. Brainwashing is one of the most extreme types of control. Brainwashing is, in some cases, referred to as mind control. Unlike lying and other milder forms of control, where the prey is free of the manipulator's grip after the encounter, the effects of brainwashing reverberate for a long time. It is thus that many individuals who are indoctrinated into groups like cults can't leave. A brainwashed individual can't simply awaken one day and choose to leave. Their brain has been changed so significantly that it takes considerable expert intervention to reverse the damage. While many individuals join these types of groups, it is important to note that religions are not the only ones prone to this sort of social influence. The media, for example, has succeeded in conditioning the world to a specific way of thinking when it comes to style, government, and even what constitutes greatness. The key reason why brainwashing is so effective is that it consolidates three strong social influence methods: the consistency technique, the influence approach, and purposeful promotion. The consistency technique alludes to a methodology where a manipulator empowers someone to accomplish something without thinking about what the objective needs are. Strategies used in the consistency technique might incorporate the issuance of a warning when a worker stays late at work. The influence approach includes changing an individual's convictions and thought processes so that they can act in a way counter to their normal behavior. A sales rep who tells a client that putting resources into a specific item will make them rich might be expected to use the influence. Finally, the promotional approach tells an individual to falsify data in order to disguise the reality of a situation. Government officials have repeatedly used promotional publicity to gain supporters while spreading slander that ruins their opponents' reputations. The key stages of brainwashing. Brainwashing happens in three distinct stages. The main stage includes separating the objective. The subsequent stage promises salvation, and the last stage directing the objective toward salvation, or, rather, changing them into what you need them to be. Stage 1. Wearing your target down. For brainwashing or conditioning to be fruitful, a predator should initially ensure that their objective is susceptible to brainwashing. Individuals who are firmly committed to their own convictions rarely have room for other convictions. Brainwashers know this. A basic tactic in this phase is planting uncertainty in the objective's brain. The vast majority of people have a strong sense of their personality. They know what their identity is. They know what qualities they have, what their needs are, and what the different roles they play in life are. So a brainwasher starts by making the individual wonder if everything they've known their entire life has been completely false. The underlying attack is to assault the objective's convictions and character to the point where the individual has a character crisis. The brainwasher's goal is to make them question their very identity. Once the identity crisis is in place, the brainwasher moves onto creating shame. For example, suppose you have upheld a specific belief for the majority of your life. To knock you further off kilter, a brainwasher may make you doubt the validity of this belief in one way or another. Worse, they'll make you feel like you're an awful person for believing it. This creates guilt and shame, which you would do anything to mitigate. The brainwasher knows this, and, as these feelings don't come from any real wrongdoing, creates an objective for you to atone for your misdeed. It is always something they want at your expense. An individual who has been blamed for being terrible or the direct inverse of who they thought they were will consistently hope to set things straight and justify themselves. Many targets wind up persecuting themselves with the expectation that they can make amends under the brainwasher's guidance. Thus, the brainwasher gains new status as an authority figure whose approval is now coveted by the target. At this point, the targeted individual cuts ties with their families and friends. From their new toxic perspective, loved ones are accomplices to the harmful life they led before they met their deliverer, the brainwasher. Brainwashers love it when a target disengages themselves from their group of friends, as this makes them more helpless and easier to influence. At this point, the target is isolated from everyone else, confused, guilt-ridden, and in urgent need of a direction. They have arrived at their breaking point. Stage 2, the promise of salvation. The predator who drives their target to this point is much like a gourmet specialist who has arranged his ingredients, marinated his meats, and is prepared to get down to the business of cooking. The first conditioning phase is where all the preparation occurs in anticipation of the real indoctrination. Once the target has reached their limit and is going through a mental breakdown, the conditioner begins giving the individual reason to hope. This hope might be a kind word, an actual gift, or some other type of love. This is the controller's method of showing the besieged target that there is a chance of relief not too far off. After getting this implicit message, the target believes they must do whatever their brainwasher tells them to keep their approval of their new mentor. The peace offering that the brainwasher doles out now is neither affirming nor benevolent. It is an aspect of the aggression the predator commits against the victim. When the victim acknowledges the peace offering, they will quite often want to give something back. People have an impulse for restitution. That is why, when someone commands you, you will probably want to say thank you, even though there are no concrete needs to do so. A victim who receives a peace offering likewise wants to give something as a trade-off. By and large, this compensation is a confession. The victim admits to their wrong ways, as defined by the brainwasher, and, afterward, is thankful for the brainwasher's guidance. The brainwasher uses this chance to channel his target's gift into guilt. A predator shows the target that their old belief system is the reason for all the guilt they're feeling. The target realizes that it isn't them that is wrong, it's their beliefs. Accordingly, the target concludes that they need to feel right again, and the best way to do so is to accept the new beliefs they are being taught. Behind the scenes, the brainwasher praises himself for wearing his victim down to the point where they are prepared to accept any belief system pushed upon them. Stage 3, Atonement. The last phase of conditioning includes the acknowledgement of the new beliefs as presented by the brainwasher. During this last stage, the target sheds everything from before and takes on another personality. The conditioned has now endured enormous suffering, the kind of suffering that they will never have to endure again. They have been molded to connect this experience with their old belief system. All things considered, the victim is eager to adhere to a belief system that recuperates them and ensures them a better life. They are converted. If this is a religion, a ceremony might be held to invite the new converts into the fold. This service is the last nail in the coffin and signifies a vital stage in the existence of the convert. Now, the convert has taken on another personality, and returning to who they were is unlikely. Relatives who have lost their friends and family to harmful cults will confirm that it is nearly impossible to persuade an individual who has effectively gone through the 3 phases of conditioning that they have made a mistake. Protecting yourself against brainwashing. Recognize your vulnerability. Many individuals assume they are immune to indoctrination. The normal individual believes they can see propaganda coming a mile away. The issue with this kind of thinking is that it blinds you to the possibility of influence coming from an unlikely source. Even the most intelligent people are susceptible to brainwashing because most predators are smart enough to pick out their vulnerabilities and zero in on them. Everyone has a weakness that can be exploited. You are responsible for discovering your shortcomings and finding ways to ensure that you are not leaving yourself open to exploitation. Check everything for accuracy. Don't be too eager to accept new things you hear or read without first taking a look at the source. The internet has annihilated limits and made it easy for misrepresentations to travel to the far corners of the planet surprisingly fast. Just because something is on the internet does not imply that it is valid. Whenever you read something, particularly breaking news, be mindful to search for logic in the claims and different sources to back them up. Beware of hype. Hype sells. You can rile people up using exaggeration, regardless of whether you are discussing an administration, a celebrity, an ideal, or anything else under the sun. Luckily for advertisers, many individuals succumb to this kind of manipulation. That is the reason, for example, a film may be promoted as being the best thing since Hollywood began. We live in a world of hashtags and culture where the pressure to fit in is intensified. Don't become enchanted by fleeting trends just because everyone else is. The things you see on your online media might cause you to want to advocate for a cause just so you have a place with the cool kids group. Whatever you do, make sure you do your research before jumping on the bandwagon. Go with your hunch. Many people are dismissive of their instincts, but you would be wise to pay attention to them. Over and over, normal intuition has been shown to shield individuals from risk. If someone tells you that something doesn't feel right, focus on that feeling. This is nature's method of protecting you from predators. Hypnosis. Hollywood has made a less than impressive display of educating general society on the realities of hypnosis. An alternative perspective is this. Hollywood has made an astounding show of conditioning people on what hypnosis isn't. In many movies, hypnosis includes a specialist hanging a watch before the subject's eyes. The subject is then transported to another state of consciousness, usually their past, where they are given orders to do things they would not have agreed to normally. The main issue with this depiction of hypnosis is that it persuades individuals to think that hypnosis must occur in an organized setting. In truth, hypnosis happens all the time in our everyday lives. The human mind has an area that controls conscious ideas and another that controls subconscious ideas. Memories are an obvious example. The memories you have of yourself are incredible, like imprints left behind by your experiences. For example, assuming your last relationship was rife with cheating and abuse, you might keep these recollections of torment and unconsciously avoid connections since you have developed an association between love and pain. Hypnosis works to replace such subconscious thought processes with better ones. Obviously, the opposite may also be valid, particularly in the situation where a predator needs to supplant cheerful thoughts with negative ones that will wear out their prey. How to avoid hypnosis? Ultimately, the best method to protect yourself against hypnosis is knowing how it is applied in day-to-day existence. When you learn what to pay special attention to, you will be better able to recognize the truth when someone attempts to control you. Be careful of who you get close to. Individuals nearest to you have a more significant capability of hypnotizing you than those that aren't. At the same time, cultivate sensible qualities that ground you, so your focus isn't constantly attracted to the newest and shiniest thing. For example, it isn't unusual to note that many manipulators depend on their attractiveness and charisma to mesmerize you. Assuming impressive looks rank high on the things that you esteem most, seeing a stranger's good looks won't affect you. The values you hold dear act as a shield that protects you from the minute you leave your house in the morning to the moment you return home after a long day of fighting the many invisible demons that roam free in the universe. Neuro-Linguistic Programming, NLP techniques. Neuro-linguistic programming is a concept that depends on the possibility that you can subliminally condition others' brains with the use of intentional activity. In less complex terms, neuro-linguistic programming asserts that it is easy to discreetly control others' behavior through language and modify their communication in relation to their environment. NLP is the brainchild, pun intended, of two American men named Richard Bandler and John Grinder. These two courteous fellows, who wear many caps between them, presented this correlation approach during the 1970s. Bandler and Grinder promoted this methodology, claiming that by using NLP procedures to imitate the behavior of extraordinary people, an individual can completely change themselves. As an individual, you can apply NLP strategies to others as well as yourself. There are different strategies associated with NLP, including context re-examining, separation, mooring, and reflecting. Of these, reflecting is the main strategy that is exclusively chosen for controlling others. Different strategies, like separation, are focused on helping you relate better to your current circumstances as a person. Mirroring. Mirroring is a control method that is used to create the sensation of camaraderie between hunter and hunted, thus making the hunted drop their defenses. The human cerebrum is conditioned to treat whatever is different as a danger. By mirroring or copying someone else's activities, nonverbal communication, manner of speaking, and even motions, you are rewiring their psyche to view you as inoffensive to their personal space. Mirroring is a particularly successful persuasion technique. Whenever you are out on the town, take a stab at imitating your date's activities. For example, assuming your date reaches for their beverage, mirror this activity. If they talk in a low manner of speaking, turn down your volume too. Self-defense against NLP manipulation. Watch the body language. One of the least challenging methods of blocking someone who is using NLP on you is by watching for their nonverbal communication signs. Notice whether an individual is mirroring you by changing up the pattern of what you do and say a bit, and then waiting for them to do likewise. Advanced manipulators know how to effectively copy nonverbal communication without giving themselves away. The beginners will reflect your activities promptly. When this happens, you can be sure you are a target for NLP control. Once you become aware of the situation, there are two different ways of dealing with your prospective NLP manipulator. You can call the individual out, or you can have some good times by changing up your behavior every few minutes. Assuming you select the last option, you can actually leave a confident manipulator speechless by nipping their burgeoning vocation in the bud. Avoid making eye contact. The eyes are extraordinary when it comes to building rapport. When an individual looks you unflinchingly in the eyes during conversation, you feel deeply connected to them. You may even feel special, and you just may be setting yourself up for NLP control. Manipulators especially love to zero in on an individual's eyes to draw them into their manipulation web. All things considered, assuming the eyes are really the windows of the soul, who wouldn't want to peek? An eye-to-eye connection allows a manipulator to see things from your point of view. When they figure this out, you are toast. If a manipulator can anticipate your thoughts, then they can influence you. Darting your eyes haphazardly around will guarantee that the manipulator will never get a decent peek through those windows. Not only is this procedure very powerful, but it can also be fun, as you may get to see the manipulator's self-satisfaction decline. And be sure to guard the soul on the other side of those windows. Avoid physical contact. You shouldn't actually allow strangers to touch you. In addition to the fact that this is an invasion of your own personal space, unwanted touch is part of a manipulator's effort to copy you. Refer back to the mirroring segment for a more in-depth clarification of what this is. Zero in on individuals who sneak in a touch or pat every now and then. They may be up to no good. Don't sign anything. NLP manipulators like to keep things moving so you make choices rapidly without really thinking about the consequences. Your psyche isn't equipped to handle things objectively when you are feeling overwhelmed. Sales reps are especially good at making clients believe that waiting to make a decision will cause them to miss out on an extraordinary deal. So it's best to take a day to thoroughly consider all your options. Decisions with respect to money, for example, shouldn't be settled too quickly. Should you wind up in a situation where you need to finalize a life-changing decision, demand additional time. You'll settle on the better choice when you are less agitated, as you will be able to think more logically. Dark seduction. Dark seduction is a technique that uses one's sexuality for purposes of controlling another. Dark seduction differs from ordinary enticement in that the manipulator receives something without offering much in return. In dark seduction, you can get as many individuals as you need to like you without committing yourself to any of them. Dark seduction deviates from the stuff of fantasies and takes on a more merciless connotation, which includes getting your truest and most heartfelt longings met to the detriment of others. It's a dark seducer who goes after the mental and enthusiastic shortcomings of their prey. There is no Prince Charming or knight in shining armor in this dark seduction. For some individuals, seduction is a natural cycle that includes loving an individual and trusting that they will love you back. The trouble with this concept is that it doesn't give you control over your seducee. Dating is a cutthroat area. If you think someone is attractive, it is highly likely that at least one other person agrees with you. So, then how do you convince the person you are interested in that they should be with you and not the next man or woman? Simply put, you play the dark seduction game. How to manipulate using dark seduction. The following are a few pointers that will come in handy. Choose your perfect victim. Don't allow yourself to stumble into a situation unintentionally. Situations are a lot easier to deal with when they are conscious decisions. So even in your seduction efforts, you must remain in control by ensuring that you choose your victim. Suppose, for example, that you like more than one associate in your work environment. Since you can't go after them at the same time, or rather, shouldn't, you should pick an associate who is typically vulnerable to your enchanting charms. Concentrate on your prey well and pick the person most likely to respond to you. The associate who has a full life and is completely satisfied will be more eagerly sought after than the person who battles with despondency on a daily basis. Send perplexing signals. Things that puzzle you are interesting. No one needs to peruse a book whose whole plot has been expounded on in its snippet. The dark seducer is baffling and eccentric and uses this mysterious eccentricity to attract individuals to him. Don't be too eager to share a lot of details about yourself. Share contradictory pieces of data about yourself in a way that leaves your prey with a riddle to solve. They will attempt to figure it out, and, in doing so, they will attempt to get closer to you so they can more easily understand you. Create a need you can cater to. Let's say, for example, you have been looking at someone who is completely content with their life as is. You need to get close and arouse them, but you can't track down the ideal situation. What do? Figure out how to disrupt complacency for your potential benefit. If a person is happy, create a situation that makes them unhappy. Then swoop in and rescue them. You will be the hero of the story, and that individual is probably going to feel as though they owe you something. At any rate, they'll begin to accept that they need you. Tempt your target. Filmmakers release trailers before a film comes out to excite their potential audience. As a dark seducer, you should have your own version of trailers that sucks your prey into your one-man or one-lady show. Try to show them just enough so they are enticed into waiting for more. Several dark manipulators have a bad boy notoriety, so there will typically be a part of your target's instinct that warns them against succumbing to your tricks. To circumvent this, you will need to put on such a satisfying act that the possible risk winds up appearing worthwhile. You always have a plot twist. Would you peruse a book whose ending you definitely knew? Many individuals would answer no to this inquiry. Assuming you fall into this classification, you will concur that the unexpected developments in a book or film keep the story interesting. It's not fun if you know everything that will happen. To stay unpredictable and energized towards your goal, make sure you don't waste time trying to figure out your best course of action. Try to be impulsive. Assuming you are zeroing in on a potential partner, leave them hanging when they expect you to ask them out for drinks. Change your timetable like clockwork, and you'll keep your target in a state of suspense. Chapter 6, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, NLP, Mind Control. Have you ever interacted with someone before and found that, inexplicably, you were experiencing strange and powerful temptations? Perhaps you felt you needed to do something that you would ordinarily never consider, or your emotions are all over the place, despite the fact that you should have been able to manage them just fine. There is an explanation for this: Neuro-Linguistic Programming, or NLP. This is a particularly powerful set of techniques, words and behaviors that trigger people into obedience. Effectively, you access and interact with the other person's mind, quietly and subtly controlling them in ways that are completely unexpected. NLP practitioners vary from people genuinely interested in helping someone else in the world to people who only want to manipulate and harm others. These techniques are difficult to identify, and if you don't figure them out, more and more of your behavior may change over time. For that reason, it is critical that you understand what NLP is and how it works. Not only will you have the choice to wield these tools yourself, But you will also identify ways that the use of these behaviors can benefit everyone. What is neuro-linguistic programming? Neuro-linguistic programming is the ability to communicate effectively with the unconscious mind of either yourself or of others. When you access the unconscious mind of someone else, you effectively bypass all of the checks and balances in place to ensure they retain free will. In particular, you are learning how to become a translator between the conscious and unconscious minds. The conscious and unconscious minds struggle to interact meaningfully with each other. One wants one thing, but the other doesn't understand the request. In the end, wires get crossed, and nobody's happy with the outcome or how it happens. However, with NLP, you can learn to speak the language of the unconscious mind. NLP identifies ways to make sure that the unconscious mind is in active communication in ways that are meaningful and important. This means that you can ensure that the conscious and unconscious minds are working in tandem with each other. This is important because, as it is commonly said in NLP, the conscious mind works out the actions and what is wanted, while the unconscious mind is tasked with ensuring that the goals and actions actually happen. Stop and think about what the unconscious mind does for a moment. It is responsible for taking care of any and all automatic actions throughout the day. You don't think about driving, your unconscious mind does it for you. You don't think about how to brush your teeth, your unconscious mind does that too. Basically, your unconscious mind goes through all of the motions, making sure that you are doing what's necessary to get through your day with the least amount of effort possible. It wants to reserve valuable conscious mind real estate for issues that are actually important, such as deciding which job to apply for or how to achieve that difficult goal that you have planned out. Because only so much can fit into the conscious mind, the unconscious takes over. It allows you to run on autopilot for all of those tedious actions that you must do during the course of your day. Without the unconscious mind, you would need to decide and consciously focus on brushing your teeth, buckling up, and more. NLP to control minds. If the unconscious mind is what takes care of all your automatic, habitual behaviors, then you may wonder why that is what NLP seeks to target. The answer: the unconscious mind is responsible for emotions. Emotions are unconscious reactions to the world around you. You do not choose to feel happiness or anger. It just happens. However, emotions are incredibly motivating. Your thoughts that underlie everything influence those emotions. Your emotions can influence your behaviors. If you want to control behaviors, you must be able to alter emotions. And it so happens the easiest way to alter emotions is by directly tapping into the thoughts of someone else. Try to visualize the cycle that goes from thoughts to feelings to behaviors and back to thoughts. When you tap into the unconscious mind, you can disrupt that sequence. You can create new thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, all because you are bypassing the conscious mind and interacting with the unconscious. Since the unconscious will almost never be acknowledged by the conscious at that moment, this is the most direct way to interact with the other person to avoid raising red flags. When you use NLP, you are using a process that has been used for years, primarily in a therapeutic sense. Despite its popularity in recent years when used in tandem with dark psychology to control people, it was initially designed to help people to be healthy. It was meant to give power back to people. Effectively, NLP techniques grant the powers of a psychologist to normal people with little training. These techniques can then be used in ways that benefit everyone involved, and you can easily help others. You will alleviate doubt, create anchors to instill confidence, and more, all because you have these skills. Of course, there is still the possibility of using this mind control for more nefarious reasons. As simply as you could use these techniques to help others, you can use them to purposely hurt others as well. Instead of alleviating anxiety or traumatic memories, you can make associations with fear and avoidance in order to get someone further under your thumb. Effectively, When you learn how to use NLP, you hold the mind of someone else, their entire being, in the palm of your hand, and you can manipulate it at will. NLP and mirroring. Before you can do anything with NLP, you must be liked. You must develop rapport with the person you are attempting to influence. Without it, you have no entrance into the other person's unconscious. Your rapport with someone is an accurate measure of how likely you are to be persuasive with that individual. If you want to affect the other person's mind, you need to be able to access it. The best way to do this is to lower the other person's guard. Before understanding how to create that rapport, however, consider that the unconscious mind is always watching. Even if your conscious mind cannot process everything that you are being exposed to, your unconscious mind can still pick up on things. It recognizes even subliminal signals, such as those included in advertisements that subvert conscious understanding. That subversion is what makes this process so powerful. When you can subvert someone else's mind, you can gain control over it. Mirroring is one way of creating that rapport. When you mirror someone, you are telling them that they matter to you and that you feel some sort of connection to them. Mirroring is what people naturally do as they grow to know those around them better. Look at two best friends for a few minutes, and you will see that they both walk the same, talk the same, take drinks at the same time, and more. They do all this for one simple reason. Their unconscious minds had developed that rapport with each other. They are directly communicating with the other person's unconscious mind, saying they like and appreciate that other person, and the other person has their utmost trust. While developing a natural relationship will always be the best way to create rapport, you do not always have time for that. In those instances, you can create rapport with 3 simple steps. Create a connection, copy the other person, and then identify their punctuator. Creating that initial connection is not particularly difficult. You will want to make good, convincing eye contact and spend time listening to the other person to bring the connection into existence. You effectively want to give the other person your utmost, undivided attention in hopes of them realizing that you do enjoy what they are talking about. During this stage, try giving the occasional triple nod. This is when you nod 3 times in a row, usually pensively, to communicate 3 things to the other person's unconscious mind. You are attentive, understanding, and agree with the other person. With that initial connection created, you will then make a point to copy the other person. You may find the best way to do this is by copying their vocal cues. While body language is always an easy target to mimic, you also risk raising red flags. People generally do not appreciate when someone else mimics them, as it can look like a form of mockery. Instead, concentrate on their verbal cues. When you do this, you will usually start by matching the other person's speaking speed and intensity. If they speak animatedly, you should do the same. If they are speaking calm and quietly, give that same energy back to them. In doing so, you let them know you are on the same page as them, even if the behaviors do not necessarily line up. With verbal cues mimicked, try figuring out what the other person's punctuator is. The punctuator is something that all people do an emphasis when they are talking. Some people may have a saying they use immediately after making their point, while others may intentionally raise their eyebrows or make a specific hand movement. What is true either way is that the punctuator is something the other person will have. If you can identify it, you can use it. Once it is identified, you should make it a point to actively use it. The next time you think the other person is likely to use the punctuator, mimic it. In mimicking it, you will tell the other person's unconscious mind that you are someone that they can relate to, and thus, you open up their mind. Of course, you will want to test that connection before moving forward. You will want to ensure that the connection made is valid before attempting to use NLP's other techniques. All you need to do is move a certain way to determine if the other person will move like you do. If they do, you were successful. If not, then you may have run into a snag and they are not as likely to follow along. Chapter 7: Hypnosis. It is time to delve into the mysterious world of hypnosis, the last of the mind control techniques you will learn. As you work toward the ability to hypnotize people, keep in mind everything else that you have learned thus far. The minds of other people are sacred and should be treated as such. If you are going to influence others, you should always make sure to do it ethically. Remember, just because hypnotizing someone for your own selfish gain is dangerous and not recommended does not mean that hypnosis itself is bad. In fact, hypnosis has a large and varied following. You see it used during labor, with women self-hypnotizing themselves to avoid the pain of labor. You see people using hypnosis to quit smoking or other unhealthy habits. You even see people using it to help themselves become more self-confident. Ultimately, hypnosis has no shortage of people willing to try it. Please note that you must always empathize consent above all. However, if you remember to keep your control of others ethical and consensual, there is no harm in using these methods. Within this chapter, you will learn how hypnosis works, understanding that it is not the utmost control over people that is typically depicted in movies and television. Instead, it is a state of extreme relaxation and suggestibility. We will go over a few positive uses of hypnosis, such as labor and delivery. And finally, we will look over the steps to hypnotize someone else that is willing to be your subject. If all goes well, influencing others will be far easier than you thought. How hypnosis works. Primarily, hypnosis works because it is usually cooperative. One person is willingly relaxed into a hypnotic state, and the hypnotist then encourages a series of desired thoughts and behaviors. In a therapeutic situation, this may look like encouraging the individual to no longer care about an ex that left or to resist those cravings of sugar and to exercise more. Effectively, it allows for the implantation of thoughts in a consensual way. This means that the hypnotist is the coach. They are there to guide the way through the subconscious to create the results the hypnotized individual is seeking. The hypnotist effectively walks the individual through the steps of hypnosis and, in doing so, guides the individual to that state of extreme calmness. Within the hypnotic state, it is often reported that the one being hypnotized is convinced they are asleep. They are so deeply relaxed that they feel entirely unaware of the world around them. However, that could not be further from the truth. When you are in a hypnotic state, you are aware and focused only on what the hypnotist is saying. If the hypnotist is guiding you through breathing practices to keep you calm, all you will focus on is what the hypnotist is saying. If the hypnotist happens to be using any sort of prop or focal object, you will focus on that. In being so focused on one particular thing or moment, you will be easily influenced. This primarily works because of the divide between the conscious and unconscious minds. While the two minds work together, the conscious mind acts as a sort of filter between what the unconscious mind is being exposed to and the unconscious mind itself. This means that the conscious is basically the guard dog of the mind, keeping certain thoughts and concepts from the more susceptible, impressionable unconscious, which is where suggestions are meant to go. When you encourage the conscious mind to focus entirely on one object or action, whether breathing, the swinging of a pendulum, or anything else, you distract the conscious. Think of what happens if you throw a dog a piece of steak. They run after the steak and happily munch on it while you are free to move where you like. Effectively, with hypnosis, you throw your conscious mind a steak by having it focus on something specific beyond what is going on around you. As this happens, the hypnotist then makes several suggestions. They will make sure the unconscious mind absorbs and internalizes all of those thoughts so they can be used and acted upon. Because the unconscious mind is going to be the one driving the actions without the conscious paying attention, those behaviors become quite easy. They simply happen because the unconscious mind does it. Remember how, in NLP, you recognize that the unconscious mind is the one that controls everything? That is effectively what you are seeing here. Hypnosis, like NLP, will make sure that the unconscious mind is acting accordingly to ensure that the one being hypnotized can do what is desired. Why use hypnosis? Now, with that in mind, you may be wondering why people are so willingly and ready to use hypnosis on themselves to the point they'll pay others for the process in the first place. The answer? Hypnosis is incredibly powerful because the unconscious mind is incredibly powerful. It should be used precisely because it does allow people to tap into their unconscious minds to unlock all of the potential they need. When you use hypnosis, you are effectively making sure you can draw on all of the benefits your mind has to offer. Such benefits include helping cope with any phobias or anxiety triggers you may have. If your anxiety and phobia are rooted in your unconscious, what better way to treat them than to directly influence them? It can help pain management without requiring medication, making it valuable for people that will need pain medication but may find they are at an increased risk for addiction. It can be used to fight stress as well, working as a sort of grounding method for the individual. It can also be used in more insidious ways. Some people use hypnosis to control others. It is commonly used for brainwashing in cults. For example, relying on the constant repetition of words or other methods that are designed to tap into the unconscious mind. This means that hypnosis can be dangerous for those who are susceptible to its effects. Not everyone is, but a vast majority of people are quite susceptible, and this means that these people could be controlled by strangers without ever realizing that it was happening in the first place. Using hypnosis. Ultimately, hypnosis happens in several different ways. Some people use a complete bombardment of the senses to trigger that unconscious state, while others will lull people into it with gentle storytelling or guided meditations. Regardless of the method, the result is the same. The other person is unwittingly controlled. We will stop and look at two simple methods of hypnosis that can be used to trigger trances, which can then be used to ensure that the one being hypnotized is completely obedient. Bombardment. Think of a time when you had a teacher that was an extraordinarily dull speaker. It didn't matter what was being discussed. Their voice was simply boring. You could not help but space out when they talked. Though unintentionally, that is what this sort of hypnosis accomplishes. When you use bombardment, you are effectively creating a constant and steady stimulation that drones on to lull the other person into a trance. It could involve someone speaking rapidly in a flat voice or using someone's naturally unvaried voice to eventually bore the person into a trance. The brain struggles to process information when it is constant and unending, which is why it becomes so difficult to understand. If you want to use this, then you need to start with a single topic and stick to it for the next several minutes, making your voice as flat as possible. You want to talk as much as possible during that time, unrelenting, even when you see that the other person is beginning to lose focus. As the focus is lost, you can talk directly to the unconscious mind, making suggestions and encouraging certain behaviors. Nonverbal hypnosis. Another method is quite similar, but it is done in complete silence. However, this one will require you to have a rapport built up with the individual that you are attempting to hypnotize, as you need to tap into their tendency to mirror you. When you use this method, you must make sure that they are following along with your own body language, and you will do something repetitive and rhythmic that is still subtle, so the other person can follow suit. When you use this, you are effectively creating the same relaxing effect that calms an infant when swayed. Just as the newborn calms to the motion, so do adults, even though they don't even realize they are still susceptible to such actions. Start by ensuring that you do have a rapport with the other person. With that established, you want to actively mirror the other person for a while until you know they are mirroring you back. From there, you will use several back and forth motions to sway the other person into a relaxed state. However, the key here is making sure that whatever you do, it is subtle and easily followed when done to others. Start by tilting your head back and forth ever so slightly. It does not have to be particularly obvious. Just gently move your head in a rhythmic manner. Chances are, so long as you are subtle, the other person won't notice you're doing it, but they will pick up on it themselves. As you do this, use more of your body, still remaining subtle in movement. Slowly raise and lower your shoulders ever so slightly, along with the slight roll of your head. Then, you can also make it a point to rock back and forth on your heels. You may alter your breathing to ensure that the other person is breathing deeply and calmly as well. With some time and effort, the other person starts following your cues, especially if you are a trusted party in the first place. As they relax, they are far more susceptible to what you are saying, and you are more likely to get them to internalize information in this state than before. Make sure that you tell them everything that you wanted their unconscious mind to know before you cease motion. Otherwise, you risk them coming out of the trance too early, negating everything you did. Chapter 8: The Benefits of Dark Psychology. At last, we arrive at the end of the book. It seems fitting to finish with a brief address of reasons to use dark psychology in non-harmful ways. Remember, while dark psychology is based upon understanding how the dark personality types prey on people, it is incredibly important to understand these abilities and skills to protect oneself. Nevertheless, as these techniques may have been maliciously used on you, let's go over the ethics of dark psychology, as well as the benefits that may arise from it. Dark psychology does not have to be the harmful concept that it has become because of the people that have wielded it. You can reclaim it. Is dark psychology evil? The million-dollar question: is dark psychology evil? The short answer is no. It is actually neutral. It does not have the capability of being good or evil in the same sense that gravity cannot be good or evil. It simply is. As a force without free will, without any way to control itself, cannot be labeled with a human construct such as good or evil. However, that does not mean that it is necessarily safe, nor does that mean it can't be used in hurtful ways. While dark psychology itself is not evil, it can be used by evil people. Just as it is not about the gun being evil, but the one wielding the gun that determines how evil the situation is. Dark psychology is entirely at the mercy of those wielding it. If the individual who uses these techniques uses them for evil purposes, that individual is to blame and no one else. That wrong is something that he will have to address for himself. Of course, that means the inverse is true as well. It cannot truly be a good force either. It can be used, however, in ways that are beneficial to people and, throughout the book, you were shown several. Is it bad to influence someone to buy a car that will truly better serve their own family? Is it bad to use your influence to alleviate someone's crippling anxiety at the idea of taking a final exam? What about hypnotizing someone so they can no longer have insomnia? You would be hard-pressed to find anyone who would claim that any of those were immoral decisions, despite using techniques common to dark psychology. Remember, dark psychology has been used to gain access into the minds of predators that are capable of far more harm than the average person. The average person is not going to intentionally and regularly manipulate and harass people. He is going to mind his own business. He does not have any interest in preying on others. So, would that person have a use for dark psychology? Quite possibly. Several other techniques can be used on yourself as well. You can anchor yourself to create your own coping mechanisms, for example, or you can self-hypnotize in order to help yourself build self-confidence. These motivations are not evil. Ultimately, whether the art is good or evil, one thing remains true. It is all about how it is used that determines how welcome the use of it is. Reasons to use dark psychology. There are several reasons to learn dark psychology. People may use these methods to help themselves. Perhaps they were a victim of a dark psychology type in the past, and they want to understand why and how that person utterly dismantled their personality. This can be therapeutic. In understanding how you have become vulnerable, you can remove those vulnerabilities to figure out how to best keep them from being used against you in the future. Some people may learn about dark psychology out of sheer curiosity. We are fascinated by what scares us. After all, horror is a massive genre in movies for a reason. You may find that learning how an evil individual's mind works is as fascinating as it is terrifying. For that reason alone, you should study how they do what they do. Other people may study it simply because they want to fight back. When you can recognize dark psychology, you can prevent it from being effective. So much of dark psychology is all about identifying vulnerabilities and exploiting them. If you know those vulnerabilities, you can simply sidestep the trap set for them. You can avoid falling for them and instead work on strengthening your own skills to elevate yourself. Effectively, dark psychology is incredibly flexible, as are the techniques. The same techniques that can utterly destroy someone else can also be used for the betterment of everyone involved. They can build self-confidence and self-esteem. They can help you cope with anxiety and other mental health issues. They can make you more likely to be successful in interacting with others simply because you will understand them better. Above all, you will protect yourself with ease. You will be able to have peace of mind thanks to studying dark psychology. At the very least, you will be able to rest easy knowing that the dark personality types will be far less likely to pull a fast one on you. Final words. Now, as this book comes to an end, try to think about the insight that dark psychology and the secrets it holds have provided you. What have you learned about the world that you didn't know before? What do you know about the mind and how it works? What secrets have you learned that are invaluable? Dark psychology is unique in the sense that it creates a window for us to see through the eyes of the narcissist, the Machiavellian, or the psychopath. In understanding how these techniques work, you can see what spurs these people to behave the way they do and what they stand to gain by doing so. While you may never want to manipulate others yourself, you will find this insight crucial, especially if you are healing from a relationship with someone who does use manipulation and abuse. When you can understand the other person's mind, you can recognize it for what it truly is, and forgive yourself for missing it in the first place. Beyond that, this insight into dark psychology allows us to see what made us so vulnerable in the first place. You will see why these problems arose. You will know how each of these techniques works and figure out how to shield yourself from them. Contemplate how NLP directly influences the unconscious mind. When you know that the unconscious is one of the most commonly attacked parts of the mind, when trying to influence someone else, you can do self-checks. You can ask yourself, why am I doing this? You can ask yourself if your behavior at that moment is your own, or if it is typical of being manipulated. You can decide if the thoughts currently driving you are your own or seem contradictory to your usual mindset. When you can recognize your thought processes in relation to dark psychology, You can figure out whether you have been manipulated in the past. Knowing that is critical to recognize if you are a victim or can avoid victimization altogether. What is true, despite the degree of insight that you have gained, is that you have gained knowledge. You now have knowledge about the mind and some of its secrets, of what's possible in the world. You have knowledge about the predators that you may have never been aware of before. That is invaluable. Knowledge is power, and if you can wield that power bravely and proudly, you will protect yourself. If you enjoyed this audiobook and you've learned more about the secrets of dark psychology, an honest review is always appreciated and will help me reach new listeners just like you who'd like to discover how to analyze people. Introduction. We sometimes regret what we say. Nonetheless, there are those individuals on the planet who are sincerely controllable, controllers, while others are manipulative and manipulators. They utilize uninvolved forceful practices to get what they want, and they will use these practices to anticipate and prevent you from saying or doing anything that they don't like, need, or care about. Ordinarily, you may not understand that they are engaging you in this sort of deed since they are adept at beguiling you and keeping the information they have stowed away. This is how the manipulator handles their victims, leaving them confused as to what happened. On the other hand, there are those enthusiastic manipulators and controllers who are plainer in their tactics. They use these strategies that will leave you humiliated, terrified, or at times use guilt trips, and frequently you as the victim will be left in an immobilized inclination and dazed. This is what the manipulator wants the victim to feel. They know the victim is dazed and cannot readily react to them. Therefore, they leave satisfied, and that is enough. Either way, intense manipulation can damage a person's psyche. The manipulator takes a shorter time to garner some data about their victim, and the deeper the info is acquired in this manner, the more confidence and power the manipulator gains, and the better they get at manipulating. This type of control will surely destroy a relationship since all respect, closeness, and trust will be lost. This is true whether the control is exercised in a personal relationship, a professional relationship, or other types of connections. Mental manipulation is one of the most well-known types of control. Because of how frequently it occurs, it may be difficult to determine how or when it happens. Simply put, consider mental control mind games. We all know someone who will kowtow to the boss or put you down to make themselves look better. People will exploit you this way, just in case you don't know what to look for. That is why it is critical that you concentrate on the subtleties of mental control and what to look for when these personalities put on a performance to achieve what they want. Knowing what to look for in people that employ these control techniques is your best defense against them. A better understanding of mental control and all of the procedures that go along with it. Manipulators follow patterns. Fortunately, by the way, they work. Most of these tactics all follow a similar pattern, and as a result, when you are able to recognize a pair, it becomes much more apparent of all of them collectively. This section focuses on what kind of framework mental control you should have, how it stows away, and what to do if you encounter it. It also focuses on what kind of framework mental control you should have, how it stows away, and what to do if you encounter it. With each type of control, know what kind of method to use and avoid being manipulated, etc. That the final step of recognizing what to do when you lose control is perhaps the most difficult, since the explanation for its difficulty stems from the fact that an inside-out understanding is the most important component of stopping it, and that can be difficult to obtain. However, if you have this information, you may use it for yourself in particular situations to assist others in achieving a tough goal in a peaceful manner, or to generate money. Take, for example, the land business. Most of the time, it is the things that matter to a person that motivate them to purchase a home, not whether it has the most up-to-date construction materials. Real estate agents understand that the things that count are founded on simple, primal feelings. Chapter 1: Manipulation and Persuasion. Most people fail to distinguish manipulation from persuasion. They are quite different in key ways. The former is only beneficial to the manipulator, while the latter, ideally, should benefit both people. Nichols, 1987. To put it simply, manipulation is far more insidious than persuasion. The manipulator sees the other person as a tool, whereas the persuader sees the other person as a partner. Manipulation. In psychology, manipulation is a type of persuasion. Unlike regular persuasion, manipulation is covert, deceptive, or underhanded. The manipulator will have no concern about lying about the situation, so long as they get what they want. The manipulator seeks only to serve themselves further. They do not care about hurting the target. The target is seen as little more than collateral damage, a necessary sacrifice to get the desired results. As such, manipulation tactics are often quite exploitative. Successful manipulation requires 3 key concepts to happen. These 3 are: 1. Concealing intentions and behaviors while remaining friendly upfront. 2. Understanding the victim's or target's vulnerabilities and exploiting those vulnerabilities to the manipulator's advantage. 3. Being ruthless enough to not care about the harm caused to the victim. Manipulation can take several different forms. Most of them follow the pattern of being covert, harmful, and causing no guilt to the manipulator. Persuasion. Though persuasion involves changing someone else's mind, it is not necessarily a bad thing. There are plenty of ways that persuasion can be used benevolently. Persuasion is any method that will actively change the thoughts, emotions, actions, or attitudes of another person toward something. It can be done inwardly toward oneself by changing one's own attitudes or outwardly toward other people. Persuasion is used everywhere. It is present in ads, politics, schools, and professions. If you can think of something, chances are there is some sort of persuasive layer to it. When persuading someone, 4 key elements must be present. The 4 elements are: 1. Someone who is persuaded. 2. The message or persuasion. 3. A target recipient for persuasion. 4. A setting in which persuasion is received. Key differences. Ultimately, persuasion and manipulation are both forms of social influence. That is where the similarities end. While persuasion is positive, manipulation is not, even within dark psychology. Manipulation is harmful, ruthless, and insidious in every way, shape, and form. When you decode whether something is manipulative or persuasive, ask yourself a few questions. What is the intention that has led you to feel the need to convince the other person of something? Are you truthful about your intentions and the process? How does this benefit the other person? The persuader will try to convince the other person that they're just trying to help. For example, you may try to convince someone to buy a specific car because it will work better for their family. You offer facts about the other car, demonstrating its use and longevity. On the other hand, the manipulator is not concerned with the other person's needs. The manipulator will push for whatever benefits them the most. There is no good intention or truth. It is also not likely to benefit the other person. In fact, it could be detrimental. For example, the manipulator may try to sell a car that is not good for the buyer because the other car may be worth more money and therefore net a much higher commission. The car is not likely to be very good for what the buyer needs, but that is not the manipulator's concern. The manipulator would see that as something the buyer should know on their own. They would not bother pointing out why the buyer is making a bad decision. The psychology of manipulation. Feelings have taken on new meanings, and some recent work attempts to contrast feelings with sentiments in order to establish which of the two comes first. Cohen, 2018. We can categorize feelings on 3 different levels after considering all of the data and views. Physically, feelings are reactions from the brain's subcortical sections in response to stimuli. These reactions generate biochemical responses within your body, thus changing one's physical condition. They can, in turn, compel one into action. For this reason, they are also seen as part of human survival instincts. Mentally, emotions are normal responses that give rise to certain thoughts and circumstances in the mind, changing one's state of mind with regards to the stimuli. For this reason, our thoughts are influenced by emotions before we can even think about them. It is therefore worth remembering how someone or something made you feel, as the emotional memory space is stored for you to mentally think about it down the road. Emotionally, this seems like an obvious one, but the emotional component is usually the most difficult to grasp. They exist within us beyond the physical and mental elements somewhere. This is the primary function of emotion, what we feel, how we experience it, and the role it plays in our lives. Simply put, it is the overall emotional condition of being. Feelings create a perpetual reaction cycle between your body and mind. They can control or improve your exercises. This is entirely dependent on your relationship with them and your level of enthusiasm. Generally speaking, sentiments are reactions to various conditions that go a long way past the actual highlights of synthetic substances delivered inside the body. Emotional facilities range between liveliness, shock, and tension to distress, scorn, and fury. Hare, 2011. Despite the fact that sentiments are a significant piece of the human experience, they have the potential to affect your own decisions, and you might sometimes make the mistake of associating emotions with everything. Although these skills are important in the workplace, they will also help you improve your social skills outside of work. To improve and perfect your ability to appreciate people on a deep level, start paying more attention to your own and those of others, their sentiments. Start focusing more and talking less, and making an effort to open up to other people's perspectives. Tips on how to develop psychology. Unfortunately, many of us rely on treatments. Life has become incredibly confusing and competitive, to the point where just keeping your head above water, let alone sharing what little additional energy or time you have with others, is a challenge. Furthermore, in Western culture, in social orders where individuals and staff are constantly moving around, changing positions, and moving to new urban communities where they live on a consistent basis, the vast majority of affiliations are becoming shallow and based on interest. Grieve, 2018. To understand another person's intentions and feelings, use your entire brain and give that person your undivided attention. Understand their actions and attitudes. Listen attentively throughout the evening if necessary. Be satisfied with them, or become pitiful with them. It is especially difficult when you are working with a dissatisfied person. Think about it before you speak. Once you've identified your sentiments and identified what triggered them, set aside some time to understand and method them before reacting. Allow time for it to settle in before responding. When you're overwhelmed by emotions, it can help you understand why you're feeling the way you are. When you understand why something has made you angry, fooled, or humiliated, it becomes much easier to decide what the next step should be. Learn about the importance of self-management. If you can figure out how to notice, control, and communicate your feelings, use them in ways that benefit from exceptional mindfulness and listening skills. The ideal circumstances will be those that care. Many people dismiss the need to communicate their feelings in a mature manner. Overlooking or suppressing feelings is equally as bad for your health as blowing up. That is, communicating feelings without considering what they might mean to others. Continue to remind yourself that, despite being suppressed, feelings produce pressure both externally and internally, and that when feelings are spoken in a rush and without belief, they are similar to shooting without pointing. Having more mental poise and always working on improving your integrity is a surefire way to improve your consciousness. Chapter 2: Main Manipulation Techniques. We all manipulate people and situations at various points in our lives. Think telling a white lie to save our skin or using flattery. For some people, however, manipulation is a way of life. It is a weapon they use to overpower their victims. Sociopaths, psychopaths, narcissists, and other social predators are critical users of manipulation. While predators may have a range of techniques, they only target particular personalities. This is because they aim to manipulate someone quickly and easily. Specific vulnerabilities render them ripe for manipulation. Nissenbaum, 2019. People with low self-esteem, naivety, low self-confidence, and people pleasers are easily manipulated. Manipulation techniques. Manipulation of someone's thinking isn't as tough as you may believe, and it can have a significant impact on your ability to get them to think the way you want them to think so that you can achieve your intended results. People can manipulate others in 7 different ways. By Senna, 2020. These aren't conversational strategies like anchoring or pace, which are used in Persuasion. Rather, these are additional essential strategies you develop with the individuals you're speaking with, and how you might use that relationship to manipulate them into thinking and making decisions that are favorable to you. The following strategies are an important part of manipulation. Trust it. Having the trust of the people you are talking to is important. When people trust you, they are more likely to actually listen to you. They will feel more compelled to have conversations with you. They will be more likely to respect what you say, and they will be more likely to agree with you or comply with you when you exercise authority. Gaining trust in your relationship comes from using tactics such as mirroring, as well as generally being trustworthy. Show that you genuinely care about what they are saying, and that you have an interest in their well-being. Make them feel as though they can feel confident in your ability to think for their better interest, so that they don't have to when they are with you. This way, when you make a request, suggestion, or subliminal command, they are much more likely to comply because they know you think with their best interest at heart. Yale, 2021. Because you have a cause when you are using any type of manipulation strategy. This means that you have a good reason for why someone should do something. When you have a reason why they should want to, or should want to do anything, they are much more likely to want to do it. The incredible thing about manipulation and mindset is that you don't need to have a great cause. As long as the cause is something that can be perceived as important and relevant, you can use it and it will work. Secret hypnosis. Manipulating people by hypnotizing them without their knowledge is a powerful form of manipulation. Technically, this is accomplished through the use of persuasion techniques such as pacing and anchoring. This is mentioned under the manipulation position because it is important and relevant in both strategies. If you want to persuade and manipulate people to do what you want them to do, hypnotize them secretly. Christensen, 2011. This is also relevant and important for deception and subliminal messages. When people are secretly hypnotized, You can speak directly to their subconscious. You don't have to worry about their conscious minds interfering. While you must accommodate their conscious mind during the conversation, you have a direct line of communication with their subconscious mind to help activate your mind control strategies. When you want to be in control of a conversation, it is critical to understand how important this process is and to activate it in every conversation, using irrelevant tactics to accomplish relevant goals. Perhaps you have heard of this technique before, but one of the best ways to get someone to say yes to what you actually want them to say yes to is to first get them to say yes to anything. Often, you want to start by getting them to say yes to things that are seemingly irrelevant to the overall picture. For example, if you want them to buy a TV, you might first get them saying yes by asking them if they are interested in having a more luxurious living room or a more comfortable space for entertaining. That way you can then naturally draw them towards a TV and get them saying yes about larger sales. You can also use this technique in many other areas. You can use it to get people to go on a date with you, to get them to go somewhere with you, to get them to give you things, or do any other number of things you might want them to do. This manipulation strategy really puts you in control and helps you get what you want. Soon, you will be able to get them to say yes to things that are unbelievably large. Using their feelings. Arguing with logic can be hard because most people are driven by feelings, not logic. Even if they are highly logical people, they are more likely to be driven by logic and emotions, not merely logic. That is why getting into their emotional state and using their feelings to get desired results is often the best way to get what you want. Proof of results. People have always been more likely to act when there is proof that the results are what they are looking for. This is why having proof of the results they can expect when doing what you say will be extremely helpful in getting your way. Think about it this way. Humans are herd animals. We do not like to be left behind or feel as though we are the odd one out. If you have proof that others have done it, then the people you are talking to are going to want to be one of those people, too. They will not want to be left out or feel as though they are the only ones not doing it, so they will naturally feel infinitely more inclined because they want to follow the herd, using irrelevant tactics to accomplish relevant goals. You may have heard of this technique before, but one of the best ways to get someone to say yes to what you want them to say yes to is to get them to say yes to anything. Often, you want to start by getting them to say yes to things that appear to be unimportant in the grand scheme of things. For example, if you want them to buy a TV, you might first get them to say yes by asking if they want a more luxurious living room or a more comfortable entertaining space. As a result, you can draw them towards a TV and get them to say yes to larger sales. This technique can also be applied in a variety of other situations. You can use it to persuade people to go out on a date with you, to accompany you somewhere, to give you things, or to do anything else you want them to do. This manipulation strategy puts you in command and allows you to get what you want. Soon, you'll persuade them to say yes to things that are enormously important to them, using their feelings. Arguing with logic can be difficult because most people are motivated by feelings rather than logic. Even if they are logical, they are more likely to be motivated by emotions. That is why getting into their emotional state and utilizing their feelings to achieve the desired results is frequently the best way to achieve what you want. Proof of results. People have always been more likely to act when there is evidence that the outcomes are what they want. This is why having proof of the outcomes they can expect if they do what you say will be beneficial in getting your way. Consider this. Humans are herd animals. We do not like being left behind or feeling like the odd one out. If you have proof that others have done it, the people you are speaking with will want to be one of those people as well. They will not want to be left out or feel as though they are the only ones not doing it, so they will feel infinitely more inclined because they want to follow the herd. Authority. People are more inclined to comply with someone who speaks and acts with authority instead of someone who appears to be intimidated or uncertain about what they are saying. If you are uncertain, wavering in your stance, or otherwise appear to be underconfident, people are going to pick this up and will feel less compelled to listen to you. They do not like to follow those who are not confident and strong. This could potentially lead them into a situation they don't want to be in. However, if you are leading with authority through confidence, strength, and certainty, people are going to assume that you know what you are talking about, and they will feel more inclined to listen and comply. Manipulation relies greatly on knowing how to impose yourself in a conversation and taking advantage of a person's natural tendencies. You may utilize this knowledge to your advantage and create a situation where you can maintain control over the conversation and manipulate people's emotions and sentiments to work in your favor by understanding how they react, act, and think. Moore, 1999. The Pillars of Manipulation. 1. They use storytelling. Being ready to integrate stories with practical realities is a splendid strategy lawyers use. The mind is bound to appreciate paying attention to a story and retain that the matter is made more than it will when immersed with a torrent of realities and statistics. Stories will regularly sidestep the legitimate piece of the cerebrum and make one figure more with their feelings than realities will. And this is the thing you need when attempting to build up a solid case for yourself. Just be careful of someone trying to use this tactic against you and making you fall for a bad argument due to them drawing your logical mind into the nearly hypnotized state that comes with being absorbed by a good story. It expands your suggestibility and diminishes your capacity to zero in on the facts. 2. They know their audience. Great lawyers highlight historical verifications on the expected hearers and judges they might need to manage and attempt their hardest to ensure that they can handle who is chosen to participate in their cases. Assuming they can take that component, they try to suggest their cases, and general methods of imparting suit the crowd they will introduce. You never know when you may end up in a circumstance when you need to discuss adequately with individuals who are not used to your typical style. You know how much you can learn about individuals you address if you influence them to approach your side. You need to figure out how to speak with them on their even out and avoid the danger of not getting what you need because of minor miscommunications and misunderstandings. 3. They show and do not tell where possible. The brain is more attracted by stories and pictures than unadulterated realities alone. They are frequently really intriguing and more straightforward for the cerebrum to retain than dates, studies, and insights. The best lawyers know this better than anybody and use it for their full potential benefit. They will introduce proof where conceivable, rather than essentially alluding to it. They will continue to indicate back to it, even though the crowd knows it's there, to continue to support the honesty of their cases and restore themselves as the expert in that specific experience as they have visual proof of apparent truth. Be mindful of somebody who is continually nagging regarding a piece of evidence they might have shown you. Question it notwithstanding seeing it. Ensure that you are not succumbing to the old stunt of confusion just to be deluded by an accursed manipulator. 4. They are reasonable. There are moments when digging in your heels and locking your jaw can play against you even when you're in the right. Extraordinary lawyers know this and can recalibrate themselves to suit the collaboration and better increment the odds of getting what they want. You can consider doing this in your own life where you find minor focuses where you concur with your rival to bring down their safeguards. When their watchman is down, you can return and show them the rationale in your place of view. This can be an extraordinary strategy since individuals are bound to get down to business when it appears power is the primary way out. So out of nowhere, changing the game on them can befuddle them into thinking they are getting what they need to be perceived by others, while you are covertly catching them in your snare from an alternate angle. 5. They appeal to emotion. There isn't anything more grounded than having the option to utilize feelings to keep someone reeling and making them eat out of the center of your hand. Advocates will regularly do this by driving observers crazy on the remain to make them good in their declaration, if it suits them, causing a jury to feel terrible for a litigant whether or not they are blameworthy, making potential customers trust them, regardless of whether it's to the most significant advantage of the customer or not. Make sure to consistently keep your head and utilize your rival's feelings against them where conceivable. Winning or losing at rounds of control frequently comes down to feeling more than they do with realities. Regardless of whether you are attempting to persuade or keep yourself from being influenced, holding your feelings under control while ensuring your objective doesn't will be the primary consideration in you leaving as the person in question or victor in these sorts of slippery games. 6. They watch the audience's body language. Body language is frequently a central consideration in how individuals see you and convey you. You will regularly visit the best lawyers change their strut as per the circumstance, so their message is being imparted on various levels. In addition, nonverbal communication takes advantage of individuals' mirror neurons and can have their nature to copy be utilized against them. Mirroring somebody's nonverbal communications can cause them to feel acknowledged or marginally scared, as though you are guessing their thoughts. Seeing somebody reflecting on you is frequently a sign that they are bound to accept what you say. On different occasions, you need to utilize this to perceive how individuals feel about you and respond in a like manner where necessary. Body language abilities can be an apparatus for understanding personalities and controlling emotions. 7. They use leading questions. Leading inquiries is the most loved method for many individuals in the legitimate business, since it allows them to control points of view, which can win or lose cases and future clients. If somebody asks you, "What amount do you disdain hockey?" they are not providing you with the choice of enjoying hockey. The inquiry, as of now, accepts you concur with the individual, asking it and essentially request how much you consent to show that you are on their side. Be cautious about individuals utilizing questions like this against you. This strategy can have you not understanding that you are being attracted into the snare of tolerating a reason that isn't consistent with you. Influence isn't spot on or wrong. It's about winning. 8. They make sure to stay the course of their arguments. You will not regularly see master lawyers diverted to safeguard non-contentions or their nobility except if the case relies upon it. The best of them will consistently highlight what has been started their contention while attempting to entangle their resistance with the subtleties of their arguments. This is an urgent illustration to learn, assuming you need to be more persuaded in your own life. It would be best if you had the option to offer your expressions and contentions that appears to be steady and cement while quickly weakening that of your rival. You need them leaving their game to play yours. When you make them play your game, you have gotten triumph. You should keep them in your world. Chapter 3. Emotional Manipulation. In this chapter, we will explore how people who exhibit deviant personality traits may use dark psychology to manipulate and control others. Types of emotional manipulation. Discussing manipulative behavior accurately requires two perspectives, from the perspective of clinical psychology and from the perspective of everyday relationships. We will begin by discussing different types of emotional manipulation using clinical terminology. Many clinical psychologists have studied and classified manipulative behavior according to well-established theories of behavior modification and cognitive learning, Brown, 2019. We will first look at some of the techniques identified by a few of these psychologists before looking at real-world examples and signs that someone is trying to manipulate you. Categories of emotionally manipulative behavior. Understanding the basic dynamics of manipulation and abusive relationships is important. Each of these general types of relationships may be characterized by specific types of behavior. Psychologists have identified many specific techniques of behavior modification commonly employed by emotional manipulators. Mahar, 2010. Some of these techniques include positive reinforcement. This technique was discovered by behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner, whose experiments with small animals in cages resulted in the theory of operant conditioning. He used cages with two levers in his experiment to prove the theory of positive reinforcement. When the small animal pushed one lever, nothing happened, but the other produced a food pellet. Through positive reinforcement, the animals quickly learned which lever to push to obtain their reward. Emotional manipulators use positive reinforcement as their strategies through techniques such as praise, false and superficial demonstrations of emotions such as charm and sympathy, excessive rewards including gifts, money, approval, and attention, and other outward demonstrations of emotions meant to make the victim feel good. Negative reinforcement. Skinner's experiment also demonstrated the effectiveness of negative reinforcement. Small animals were once again placed in cages with two levers for this part of his experiment. This time, the cages were charged with a low voltage of electricity, causing minor discomfort to the animals placed inside. The animals would enter the cages and press one of the two levers. One of the levers had no effect, while the other cut off the electrical current, relieving the discomfort. The animals quickly learned to press the lever that reduced their pain. Emotional manipulators also employ negative reinforcement in their strategies by using techniques such as removing someone from a difficult situation or relieving them of responsibility to complete a previous agreed job or task in exchange for some type of favor. Intermittent reinforcement. Intermittent reinforcement, which can be positive or negative, is used to instill doubt, fear, or uncertainty. An emotional manipulator may train his or her victim by imposing inconsistent reward and punishment mechanisms in order to reduce the victim's sense of control, autonomy, and confidence. In a romantic relationship, for example, the predator may condition the victim to wear specific clothing, listen to specific music, eat specific food, and work at a specific job. As the victim gains confidence in this relationship, the predator may discourage the victim, who will be caught off guard. As the victim tries to respond, the manipulator may change tactics once more. Punishment is a very basic form of emotional manipulation that may involve an entire range of psychologically and emotionally negative and damaging behaviors, such as threats, yelling, nagging, complaining, intimidation, insults, guilt, and other forms of emotional blackmail. Skilled predators may find a way to incorporate this abusive and controlling behavior into the relationship over time, so that the victim will develop a tolerance for abuse. This technique is similar to the use of punishments, but instead of being a feature of a long-term relationship, these techniques involve discrete episodes in which the manipulator uses verbal abuse, displays of anger, and other forms of dominance and intimidation to discourage the victim from engaging in certain types of behavior. Specific types of emotional manipulation. Within these major categories of emotional manipulation techniques, psychologists have also identified a wide range of more subtle variations that we all likely encounter on a daily basis. These techniques include lying. Dark triad personalities, particularly psychopaths, are skilled at lying and cheating. So often, we may not detect their intent until it is too late. Beware of those who have demonstrated a pattern of dishonesty. Lying by omission. Lying by omission is a little more subtle. The predator may not say anything that is untrue, but may withhold information that is necessary in an effort to cause you to fail. Denial. Often the damage from emotional manipulation is inflicted after the fact. When you confront someone with evidence of their dishonesty and abuse, their refusal to admit wrongdoing can cause even greater psychological harm. Rationalization. The increase in popular news media has led to the growth of public relations and marketing firms that produce spin to deflect criticism in both political and corporate environments. Rationalization is a form of spin in which a manipulator explains away his or her abuse. Like rationalization, minimization is a form of denial in which the predator understates the seriousness of his or her offense. Selective attention and/or inattention. Manipulators will pick and choose which parts of an argument or debate should be considered so that only their views are represented. Manipulators resist giving straight answers to questions when they are confronted by their victim. Instead, they will divert the conversation to some other topic or change the subject altogether. More serious than a diversion, a manipulative person confronted with his or her own guilt will often evade responsibility by using long, rambling responses filled with so-called weasel words, like most people would say, according to my sources, or other phrases that falsely legitimize their excuses. Covert intimidation. Many manipulative people will make implied threats to discourage further inquiries or resolution. A true form of emotional manipulation, a manipulator will exploit the integrity and consciousness of the victim by accusing them of being too selfish, too irresponsible, or not caring enough. Although shaming can be used to bring about social change when large corporations or governments advance abusive or discriminatory policies, manipulators may attempt to intimidate their victims by using sharp criticism, sarcastic comments, or insults to make them feel bad. Blaming the victim. This tactic has become increasingly common. When a victim accuses a predator of abuse, the predator will attempt to turn it around by creating a scenario in which the victim is solely responsible for the harm that came to him. The predator may also try to accuse the victim of being the aggressor by complaining about the violation. Using the opposite tactic of blaming the victim, the predator will lure a conscientious person into a trap by pretending to have been grievously wounded and cultivating feelings of sympathy. The real plan, however, is to take advantage of the caring nature of the conscientious person by toying with their emotions. Playing the servant. This tactic is common in environments marked by a strict, well-established chain of command, like the military. Predators become skilled at manipulating this system by creating a persona of suffering and nobility in which their bad actions are justified as duty, obedience, and honor. Seduction is not always associated with sexual conquest or intimacy. Emotional predators may use flattery and charm to convince people to do their bidding, and they often look for people with low self-esteem. Projection. This term is used in psychotherapy. Predators who use this technique will look for victims to use as scapegoats. When the manipulator does something wrong and is confronted, he or she will project his or her guilt onto the victim in an effort to make the victim look like the responsible party. Feigning innocence. This technique can be used as part of a strategy of denial. Under questioning, the manipulator will play innocent by pretending that any violation was unintentional or they were not the party who committed the violation. A skilled manipulator who lacks morality and empathy can be very successful at planting the seed of doubt. Feigning confusion. This technique can also be used as part of a strategy of denial. Under questioning, the manipulator will play dumb or pretend to be confused about the central point of the conflict or dispute. By creating confusion, the manipulator hopes to damage the confidence of his or her victim. By using claims, whether true or not, that the victim's friends, associates, or everyone else is doing something, the manipulator will put pressure on his victim to change his or her behavior or attitude. Signs that you're being manipulated. Every one of us is vulnerable to emotional manipulation by people who apply dark psychological tactics. In our daily interactions with coworkers, managers and supervisors, family members, and significant others, we might become victims. Emotional manipulation can also occur in professional connections with persons we might consider to be trustworthy, such as sales reps, government officials, and representatives from institutions including medical facilities, banks, corporations, schools, and legal firms. Emotional manipulators all have one thing in common. Hyde, 2018. They seek out people who are diligent, dependable, loyal, honest, and trustworthy. Because all of the methods in the manipulator's toolkit are designed to take advantage of these emotional and psychological attributes. People with these character traits are the simplest to influence. Emotional manipulators, moreover, lack empathy and morals. They don't see their misdeeds as startling or unpleasant, but rather as job security and a good opportunity. Emotional manipulators exist in many aspects of society. They've learned to adapt, blend in, and even achieve great levels of professional and financial success in the straight world throughout the course of their lives. Schreier, 2011. Remember that you are a conscientious person if you have a reasonable expectation that others will be honest in their dealings with you. Emotional manipulators are skilled at exploiting this expectation and evading detection and/or punishment, despite the fact that they are in a superior position. Emotionally manipulative people, as we've seen, employ a wide range of techniques and methods to obtain influence in relationships. Furthermore, the people you are closest to and most familiar with, the individuals you should trust the most, are in the best position to exploit and take advantage of your trust through emotional manipulation. In fact, one of the most important aspects of a successful attempt to manipulate someone's emotional vulnerability and influence them, whether for personal gain or sheer malice, is to create trust and familiarity. Of course, just because this form of abuse is becoming more frequent does not mean you should automatically label all of your friends and associates as controllers and manipulators. Resist the tendency to see honesty and conscientiousness as a problem. Emotional manipulation victims, on the other hand, are frequently ignorant that they are being manipulated and exploited. Thus, it is critical to understand how to spot the signs of manipulation. You will achieve a greater degree of happiness and success, and can avoid many of the problems that plague people who are unaware of what is happening to them, or who have been intimidated into not reacting by devising a healthier way of resolving disputes and conflicts, or devising an exit strategy to protect yourself from any further damage. By devising an exit strategy to protect yourself from any further damage. By devising an exit strategy to protect yourself from any further damage. By devising an exit strategy to protect yourself from any further damage. By devising an exit strategy. You may have been exploited or violated by an emotional predator at work or in your personal life. To say the least, the prevalence of this abnormal behavior and the extent to which it has become accepting is alarming. The following list deviates from the above more theoretical and clinical descriptions of predatory behavior to provide more vivid instances of the type of behavior that could suggest emotional manipulation. Specific examples of emotional manipulation. Insisting on meeting at certain locations. Manipulators may try to get the upper hand by insisting on a so-called home court advantage, thereby forcing you to function in a less familiar environment that diminishes your personal negotiating power. Roessler, 2019. Examples. If you have a dispute with a professional acquaintance or colleague, they may insist on meeting in their office or at a cafe or restaurant that is more difficult for you to travel to. If you are in a personal relationship, your partner may always insist that you meet him or her at their favorite spot and meet with their friends. They may show little interest in reciprocating when you invite them to participate in a social activity you find rewarding. Premature intimacy or closeness. The manipulator will immediately shower you with affection and reveal all sorts of intimate secrets. Examples. In a personal relationship, the manipulator may begin by saying, "No one has ever made me feel this way before," or "I know we were meant to be together." This type of intimacy and closeness can occur in a professional setting as well. "You know, I've been watching you work, and I can see how skilled and talented you are." A coworker you don't know well may say, "Nobody ever gives you the credit you deserve." Managing conversations by always requiring you to speak first. In professional relationships, this is commonly used as a sales and negotiation technique to mine you for your information to make a more lucrative sale. Examples: a salesperson may say something like, "Rather than bore you with details about our products or services, why don't you tell me about yourself and how you think we can help you?" In personal relationships, this technique can be used to gain a power advantage. Skilled manipulators will conceal their true motives by saying things like, "I may have been wrong, but first I'd like to hear your side of the story." Distorting or twisting facts. Whether in personal or professional relationships, manipulators will use conversational techniques to distort facts in an effort to make you doubt yourself and back down. Example: a manipulator may use a phrase like, "I understand how you feel. I'd be angry too. But the truth is, I never made that comment. I don't think your memory of that conversation is accurate. I know what you meant to say was that." Chapter 4: Dark Persuasion. Persuasion is used all the time around us. You're used to this type of influence if you've ever seen a commercial on TV or the internet, or read a news article. But in this case, we'll look at persuasion at a more local level. This is the type of thing that we all notice, so it's not a stunt or a dull control. We'll look at some of the ways a manipulator uses persuasion to get what they want without us even noticing. Elements of persuasion. In relation to influence, there are a few things to consider, just as there are with other types of control. These elements aid in determining which impact clears it up. Take the ability to persuade others. The listener is allowed to make his or her own decisions. Finally, the persuasion methods persuade folks to change their minds and follow the persuader's lead. The subject can choose how they want to receive it, whether they want to buy anything or not, and whether they believe the evidence supporting the influence is convincing enough to change their minds. There are a few components to this influence that help depict it exhaustively, while also providing us with a more profound understanding of this perplexing topic. The fact that influence is frequently iconic is the most important aspect of this topic. This suggests persuasion through the use of words, sounds, and images to communicate an idea to an objective listener. There is a pretty simple rationale behind this. In order for one person to persuade another to behave with a specific objective in mind, they must first demonstrate why they should act sad, not the other way around. This is best accomplished through the use of word sounds and other images. Niall Lassie, 2019. To demonstrate your position, you can use language to start a debate or argument. Pictures are an excellent way to demonstrate the proof needed to persuade someone to go for it. There are certain nonverbal cues that can be used. They aren't always as effective as words and visuals, though. The next point is that influence will be used to deliberately influence how others act or think. This one is self-evident. You don't use influence to persuade people to change, provided you don't try to influence others on purpose. The persuader will use a variety of methods to persuade the subject to embrace it in the same manner they do. This could be as simple as having a dialogue with them or showing them proof that supports their point of view. However, in order to change the subject's mind, it could involve a lot more difficult methods. Influence has the obvious feature of allowing the subject to make a choice. They are given the freedom to make their own decisions in this way. Regardless of how hard someone tries to persuade them of something, they don't need to go out, in most cases, Redkozavuva, 2017. Even if the subject hears 1,000 advertisements about the best car to buy, if they don't like the brand or don't need a new vehicle at that time, they will not go out and buy it. Consider this. If the topic is opposed to early termination, regardless of how many people come forward to emphasize how amazing fetus removal is, it's unlikely that the subject will change their minds. This provides significantly more decision-making capacity than other types of brain control, which may explain why many people do not believe this to be a kind of mind control when confronted with it. Influence is a type of mind control that can take many forms. While training, spellbinding, and control should all take place face-to-face, and in some cases, in complete separation, influence can take place in other ways. Subliminal persuasion. Subconscious influence refers to a marketing message that is shown below the line of shopper attention in order to persuade people to change their minds without their being aware of it. This has to do with persuading people by means other than words. Some of our advancements in scent, visual perception, sound, contact, and taste are influenced by subconscious influence strategies. There are primarily 3 subliminal strategies for influencing someone. They include building a relationship. Building a relationship causes the other individual to feel great. This will make the other individual feel more at ease. This can be refined through a sound perception power that coordinates with their disposition or state. These aids assemble trust. The power of conversation, the force of an amazing, persuasive individual is abundantly associated with a publicist transformation. The right words assist with your simplicity. In a conversation or partnership, suggesting useful and beneficial things to a power partner allows an individual to be more open to fresh considerations. Basic persuasion techniques. A few procedures can be used to make influence more successful. Different types of influence are being introduced day by day to all listeners. For example, a film organization will zero in on convincing their listeners. 3 influential strategies have dominated since the introduction of this theme, Dove, 2020. Create a need. This is one of the strategies that the controller frequently uses in order to shift the perspective of their listener. This creates a need, or more accurately, a desire for a need that the individual already possesses. The listener will eat out of the persuader's palms, assuming it is done well. This indicates that, analogous to the demand for self-actualization, the controller should make use of the listener's basic needs. Food, for example, is something that most people have to make do with, and delayed necessity will be a serious issue. There is a better chance of success if the specialist can persuade the subject that their store is fantastic, or if they can receive more food or shelter by changing their beliefs. Utilizing illustrations and words. The words one chooses can have a big impact on one's ability to use influence. When talking about something, there are many different ways to convey your thoughts. When attempting to use persuasion, speaking the appropriate words in the proper way is the thing that will have a major impact. Tricks used by mass media and advertising. The media uses 2 principal strategies to convince the masses. The first is using pictures, just like the utilization of sounds. Images. Our mind's eye and visual handling regions are incredible. Have you ever thought about an individual without winding up imagining what they look like? It is a result of this that makes symbolism and visual control a favored strategy by the media. Organizations will frequently incorporate split-second pictures of their items or people embedded into a commercial that appears to be very honest on face value. Dimsdale, 2021. This is normally a type of subconscious influence. These brief instant pictures that are normally accepted, as a rule, wind up taking some type of control of the person in question, which convinces them to get that specific service. Sound. Sound is one more stunt that is utilized by the media under the influence of clueless listeners. Certain people, on the whole, dismiss the powers that exist in sound. But to answer this, how many times have you heard a song only to have it sound continuously in your mind? Songs usually influence us, even though we are not aware of it, even knowing you are listening to it. This is something that the media will more often than not exploit as they continue to look for influence from the masses. There will regularly be a few expressions handily covered up and rehashed in a noticed melody that will, in all likelihood, persuade you to lean towards favoring one organization over the other. An illustration of this can be seen at McDonald's. The song, "I Love It," is frequently rehashed in a way that convinces individuals to continually purchase their meals. Dark persuasion techniques to be on the lookout for. After learning about the different types of influence and what they all mean, you may realize why dim influence is so dangerous to the individual in question. Having the ability to comprehend the many approaches that the controller may employ will help you understand what is going on when it is being used on you. So, how exactly is a drab persuader going to use this strategy to achieve their goals? The controlling one will employ one or two tactics, although the following are the most well-known. The long con. The long con is the primary strategy we'll look at. This method is a little sluggish and time-consuming, but given how long it takes and how difficult it is to notice or even pinpoint when something has gone wrong, it could be effective. One of the main reasons some people resist being influenced is that they believe the other person is pressuring them, which causes them to back off. They will also avoid the person seeking to persuade them if they sense a lack of connection or trust with the person attempting to persuade them. The long con success is based on their ability to overcome these fundamental obstacles and deliver the persuader exactly what they desire. The boring persuader will take as much time as they need to gain the trust of their audience in the long con. They will make an attempt to get to know the individual in question and to ensure that they trust and like them. This will be done by the persuader through phony affinity building, which can appear excessive at times, and other methods that help to increase the level of comfort between the persuader and their target. When the persuader notices that the listener is mentally prepared, they begin their efforts. It starts by gradually persuading the person, and then the listener figures out how to do what the persuader wants. The persuader will benefit from this in two ways. First and foremost, the listener becomes accustomed to the persuader's impact. The second is that the listener will form a psychological relationship between the persuasion and a positive consequence. Because the persuader would rather not make it too obvious what they are doing, the long con will take a long time to complete. A recently bereaved woman, for example, is viewed as weak due to her age. After her misfortune, a man begins to get to know her. This man is possibly somebody she knows from church or even a family member. He begins to invest more energy in her, giving her colossal grace and tolerance, and it doesn't take excessively long for her gatekeeper to drop when he comes around. Then, as we previously stated, this man proceeds to execute some more modest examples of good effect. He might tell her about a better financial balance to use or a better way to lower her monthly bills. The man tries to use some shady influence once more. He might try to persuade her to let him save some of her money for her. She agrees because of the favorable influence that was previously used. Obviously, the man will try to extract everything he can from her. Assuming the controller is sufficiently talented, she might feel that he attempted to help her, yet the cash was lost since he had just run into some misfortune with the speculation. This is the manner in which dark psychology could go. Graduality. When we learn of demonstrations of dark influence, it is sometimes incomprehensible and mind-boggling. What they fail to recognize is that this dark influence will not be a large or abrupt solicitation that emerges unexpectedly. It's more like a flight of stairs when it comes to dark influences. When the two meet for the first time, the persuader will never ask the listener to do something major and emotional. If everything else is equal, they will instruct the listener to take one step at a time. When the controller's goal is to go above and beyond, the entire cycle looks to be, to a lesser extent, a no-brainer. Before the listener realizes it, they've gone a long way down, and the persuader isn't going to let them leave or bounce back. Let's look at an example of how this interaction will look in reality. Assume there was a criminal who wanted someone else to carry out their wrongdoings on their behalf. This was done by pack managers, clique pioneers, and even Charles Manson. This criminal would never consider starting the cycle by asking for their listener to be slain in their place. This would act as a warning, because no rational person would want to kill someone they have never met. If all other factors were equal, the criminal would begin by having the listener perform a minor task, such as committing a minor crime or concealing a weapon for them. In comparison, something that isn't as big of a deal for the person at issue. Over time, the controller's skill at persuading their listeners to do demonstrations will improve. Also, because they were the ones who committed the more minor wrongdoings, the persuader transfers them onto the individual at issue, extortion. The listener will feel as if they have gone too far before they realize it. They will then be encouraged to commit some of the most heinous atrocities imaginable. Also, people will commonly do this today because they believe they have no other option. Dark persuaders will be experts at leveraging this graduality to help them broaden the scope of their influence over time. They'll recognize that no one will immediately recover from any major wrongdoing or offense. The persuader strives to create an extension to arrive along these lines. When the listener perceives how far along they are, it is past the point where it is possible to turn back. Chapter 5: Concepts of Hypnosis. Before learning the different techniques of hypnosis, understand how the mind works and how people communicate and behave. Make hypnosis effective and efficient. The human mind is a complex mechanism. Learning these concepts enables you to hypnotize anyone, anytime. Understanding these hypnosis concepts helps you recognize which technique to use or is being used on you. The power of suggestion. Sometimes, people act based on someone else's suggestions. The power of suggestion is what advertisers use to convince consumers to buy a product. Hypnotists also use this power of suggestion to induce hypnosis. The most common example of the power of suggestion is the placebo effect. This is a suggestion during the waking state. Doctors, nurses, and pharmacists apply the power of suggestion to patients. The doctors would sometimes give an ordinary pill to patients. Patients who believe that this pill cures their disease feel better. Why? The doctors suggested that a particular pill could heal them. Combined with the power of language, suggestion creates expectations. Barbaraz, 2011. It creates a powerful way of making the hypnotized person move towards his or her dominant thoughts. The power of imagination. The human mind is capable of unlimited imagination. Together with the power of suggestion, you can create endless possibilities. Visualization scripts include the power of imagination. This power helps people achieve anything. Consciousness versus the subconscious. In psychology, the mind can function on conscious and subconscious levels. The conscious part is what you can control. The conscious mind makes decisions, thinks logically, and performs cognitive functions. It is the origin of willpower and the reorder of short-term memory. It dwells in the past, present, and future. On the other hand, the subconscious mind controls body functions and automatic reactions and reflexes. You do not think before you act. like a computer program. Once the run button is hit, similarly, the subconscious mind automatically executes whatever actions a particular body part or organ is required to do. Examples are breathing and blinking. The subconscious mind is the seat of habit and long-term memory. It does not change so easily. Embedded memories, actions, and reactions in the subconscious take time or years for new ones to replace them. The subconscious controls self-preservation mechanisms. This is the reason hypnotists cannot make a person do something bad while hypnotized. The mind generalizes and filters events, actions, objects, or anything seen, felt, heard, tasted, and experienced. Generalization is the ability of the mind to think in blocks or concepts. It makes thinking quicker, especially in times of danger. Filtering is the ability to block sensory inputs and delete negative mental images. Language patterns. Hypnotists use language patterns to hypnotize other people. These patterns include disassociation, supposition, double blinds, metaphors, embedded commands, exploration, and anticipation. Use of metaphors. Metaphorical language patterns are an excellent way to make other people trust you. They can relate to what you are saying. With metaphors, you can speak about the lives of your targets. Double binds. This linguistic pattern offers choices, usually two, for your subjects or targets. Whatever the answer is, the outcome is the same. The double bind language pattern is usually only answered with a yes or no. Embedded commands. In this language pattern, you are commanding other people to do what you want them to do. It is usually used in an authoritarian method of inducing hypnosis. When we examine induction scripts more closely, we discover that all induction techniques, with the exception of nonverbal methods, use embedded commands to provide suggestions and seek permission. Disassociation. This pattern uses an out-of-body experience. Many people fall into a dissociative state when they experience stress or traumatic events. This disassociation seems to be a natural response for most people. Disassociation happens naturally during hypnosis. You can utilize this natural occurrence to hypnotize other people. The laws of the mind. Thoughts affect the body. If the mind thinks you are strong, the body seems to follow. This is the reason that constant emotional stress weakens the body. You can use this law to induce hypnosis. If your target thinks that hypnosis is possible, they are more susceptible than those who are skeptical. Concentrated attention. The more you consider something, the more real it becomes. For example, imagining yourself to be more sociable or productive at work will cause your conscious mind to believe it. As a result, you plan how to achieve your goal. Concentrated concentration, on the other hand, has a negative impact on people who have difficulty distinguishing between reality and fantasy. These people live in a cocoon-like world at times. This mental law can be used in hypnosis to hypnotize anyone and improve your subject ideas. If you pay close attention to your targets, they will believe everything you say. Dominant effect. People create habits over time. They hold on to this habit to rationalize their behavior and thoughts. Once an idea is embedded in the mind, it takes time for it to be replaced by a new one. For new ideas to replace old ones, people need strong emotional connections. Otherwise, consequences will follow. Association. People occasionally experience when they can correlate such emotions to something, which is the polar opposite of disassociation. For example, classical music relaxes the mind, while metal rock music evokes harsh and negative vibes. Reverse effect. This law proposes that the conscious mind cannot force the subconscious to follow. The greater the effort of the conscious mind to understand or remember something, the harder it is for the subconscious to respond. Negation. The mind does not know how to compute negation. When you say, "Do not think of this or that," the first thing the mind does is think of this or that. For example, "Do not imagine that this elephant is violet." The mind interprets it as, "See the elephant, it is violet." Compounding. This law utilizes the compounding effect of repeated suggestions. Every time you make the same suggestion to the same person with only slight variations, you create a pattern. In the succeeding hypnosis, induction is easier than in the first to third sessions. Core beliefs. Core beliefs are created early in life. These beliefs determine who you are and what you are in life. However, every core belief does not define all aspects of your life. One core belief may define how you deal with your social life, but not how you manage your work environment. These core beliefs are consistent with the rest of your life, but can be altered through hypnosis, willpower, and other life-changing events. These beliefs play a big role in retaining long-term problems in your life. Understanding these personal core beliefs will help you know exactly how to hypnotize someone. Hypnosis facts. Hypnosis is the susceptibility of the mind to suggestions. Despite this state, a person under hypnosis subconsciously knows what is being done except that he/she allows these things to happen. Common applications of hypnosis include hypnotherapy, which aims to improve well-being. You cannot inflict damage on a person in a hypnotized state. Even in such a state, a person can react to danger. The mind has defense mechanisms that are hard to understand. The practice of hypnosis has been around for so many centuries. Pune, 2012. Lately, scientists have devoted time to studying and explaining how and why it is possible. Many theories arise regarding the different practices of hypnosis. Here are the truths about hypnosis. Hypnosis is a natural, inherent trait. It happens to everyone, in some form or another. You may not recognize it, or may even deny that you witnessed it at least once, maybe more. Each person may drift in and out of the hypnosis state. For example, you are reading a novel. You are so engrossed with the story that you do not hear your significant other asking you a question. Your conscious mind may not register the question, but you know you are being asked. In some ways, it resembles hypnosis. Others do not call it that way. Since it is a natural trait, a hypnotized person is not at risk of getting stuck in one state or another. They drift into a wakeful state of deep sleep. Thus, hypnosis is not dangerous. The experience is like listening to a boring speech and zoning out until the speaker finishes. Some may feel disorientated, but such feelings do not last. Hypnosis is not a sleep state. Although the word hypnosis comes from the Greek word hypnos, which means sleep, it does not constitute a normal sleep state. A hypnotic state seems like you are asleep, but your mind is aware, awake, and responsive. You hear everything. Your senses heighten. Hypnosis does not make a person weak-willed. A hypnotized person is susceptible to suggestions, but it does not mean they are weak-willed. They remain in control. In fact, they can stop hypnosis anytime they want. If hypnosis makes a person weak-willed, hypnotists could abuse such power over a hypnotized person. A lot of hypnotists can command a person to do everything they say. Fortunately, a hypnotized person remains in control. This is despite his or her high susceptibility to suggestions. Relaxation is not a prerequisite for hypnosis. You can hypnotize a person anywhere, anytime, provided that person is willing. You may even do it during a strenuous activity. Hypnosis can bring relaxation, but relaxation is not a prerequisite. Hypnosis does not cause permanent amnesia. A hypnotist can command a person to forget, for the time being, what has transpired. This allows the mind to process the events subconsciously. In the long run, a previously hypnotized person can remember the hypnosis in great detail. Hypnosis is different from a trance state. Many hypnotists have difficulty identifying the difference between hypnotic and trance states. Most of the time, these two words are used interchangeably. The only similarities between the two are the heightened senses and the efficient mind. Hypnosis deals with heightened susceptibility of the mind, most likely the subconscious part. The trance state targets both conscious and subconscious. Chapter 6. Tips to Read and Analyze People. Take note when somebody sends a chill down your spine. You don't know why, but you felt awkward around the person you were confronting. In spite of your best efforts, you couldn't come up with an explanation. The main thing you knew was that you were scared of the individual before you had no clue about how to defeat them. There was a reason for this stomach response. You sensed something wrong with this person. You didn't have to know the particulars, and all that made a difference to you was that your responses were precise. Your senses did their job. When you first glance at somebody, your oblivious brain goes through a wide range of data to think of what it accepts as a substantial perusing of the individual. This occurs beneath your awareness. This implies that you are not mindful of what's going on, but you can react to it without exertion. Responding without qualms is a helpful characteristic in an endurance setting. You are doing whatever it takes not to justify what and why when in an endurance setting. You basically respond without much forethought, without burning through important times that could be the contrast between life and death. However, assuming you are not in a last chance circumstance, do you want to act on impulses? Will your impulses help you discern whether the person at the interview is lying or is uncomfortable about something? Or to determine how your partner is feeling during an argument? There are many motivations, regardless of whether you have a fair response. When you can examine somebody, you are more ready to adapt. Then, you can act objectively. Rubin, 2012. You can plan how best to respond to the situation. This implies that in the cutting-edge world, when circumstances are seldom decisive, putting forth an attempt to change to react sanely is key. Know what the issue is and how to react appropriately. Why do people analyze others? Analyzing individuals is something used by different individuals to various limits. The most essential reason why you might conclude that you wish to examine somebody is that you want to get them. When you have the proper strategy for getting others, you will find that having an intellectual rather than a passionate associate is basic to setting up genuine association with another person's mind. Consider, briefly, that you are attempting to land an arrangement with a vital customer. You understand that the arrangement is necessary if you want to keep your job and possibly advance, but you also understand that it will be a difficult task to complete. Assuming you can pursue another person, you can adequately permit yourself the capacity to genuinely realize what is happening in their mind. Think about it. Let them know if the customer is awkward and if they react appropriately. See if the customer is being dishonest and react accordingly. You can determine whether the customer is uninterested, feeling compromised, or even irritated with your endeavors to impact the person in question, and you will then sort out some way to reply. When you can comprehend another person's mentality, you can manage yourself. You can calibrate your conduct to ensure that you will be persuasive. You can ensure that your customer feels good by having the option to change your conduct to discover what was causing the inconvenience in any case. In the past, having the option to self-direct and having the option to pursue others was basic in a few different circumstances too. If you can pursue another person, you can shield yourself from any danger that might emerge. Assuming that you can pursue another person, you can essentially comprehend their position better. You can learn how to convince or control the other individual. You can get the individuals to do things that they would otherwise avoid. Ultimately, having the option to investigate others has so many basic advantages that it is advantageous to have the option to do as such. Fostering this range of abilities implies that you will be more in touch with the feelings of everyone around you, allowing you to ensure that you have a higher capacity to appreciate people at their core because you have come to understand what feelings look like. Recognize your own feelings through self-reflection and to figure out how to focus on the development of your body. The capacity to dissect individuals can be priceless in practically any setting. How to analyze people. Though it might sound startling, figuring out how to investigate others isn't nearly as troublesome as it might at first appear. There are no muddled principles that you want to remember or any abilities that you want to master. Get familiar with examples of best practices and what they mean. This is on the grounds that once you recognize the practices, you can sort out the intention behind them. The more you think, you may figure out what it is that someone's eyes are restricting to a meaning and then identify it with the use of a few distinct tasks or practices. When someone's speech and nonverbal communication aren't in sync, you can figure out what to expect. When individuals don't understand how nonverbal communication works, it rarely lies, so you may rely on it for essential information if you're dealing with others. The attempt to comprehend humans is based on the fact that it is commonly known that there is a cycle between considerations, sentiments, and behaviors. Your ideas become sentiments. Your sentiments influence your behavior, as evidenced by your body language. Most of the time, this is an unnoticed cycle. You have no idea what is going on. In any case, a few treatment schools, such as intellectual social brain research, have decided to distinguish and use this cycle. If you recognize the existence of the cycle, you can take advantage of it. Essentially, look at a person's behaviors and then trace them back to the emotions that underpin them. This is the reason nonverbal communication is so critical to comprehend. Takahashi, 2020. When you can get what is new with somebody's conduct, you can comprehend their sentiments. When you comprehend their sentiments, you can discover the hidden musings that they have. This is about the closest thing to mind perusing that you can ever achieve. To break down others, you have a basic cycle to overcome. Learn the impartial standard of conduct. This is the individual's default conduct. Search for deviations in that unbiased conduct. After that, you put together groupings of practices to figure out what's going on with the other individual, and then you investigate. This cycle is easy, and if you can figure out how to do it while also figuring out how to decipher the different sorts of nonverbal communication, you will find that understanding others would never be easier. Establish a neutral baseline behavior set. The most difficult part of being able to study someone else is determining how to discern their standard of conduct from their own. If you can accomplish this, you will distinguish how those individuals operate in a nonpartisan context. You will have a good idea of what that person's traits are. Anyone who appears to be held or unusually afraid, for example, will almost certainly display a few signs of distress. They may fold their arms to shield their bodies, or they may stand guardedly and refuse to make eye contact. This is a classic nonverbal communication pattern that is consistently demonstrated by people who are lying and don't have the foggiest notion, as you will learn later by browsing. A shy person, on the other hand, is most likely not lying if their default behavior is to cross their arms and avoid eye contact. Because people's basic character types and characteristics differ so dramatically from one another, this becomes a fundamental first step that you should never skip. In any other case, you would accept that any modest person could be attempting to mislead you. It is critical to obtain an image of the gauge character and nonverbal correspondence qualities. Recognize deviations from neutral behavior. Once you've established your standard, you may start identifying any deviations from it. This means that you can use your underlying perceptions to figure out which of the practices you're witnessing don't match what you've expected. This stage can occur in a variety of connections. You can ask a question and then observe the response to determine whether or not the person is being truthful. You can test and look for signs of inconvenient behavior. When attempting to persuade someone to do something, you can adequately test your persuasiveness. Recognize clusters of deviation. Recognizing those singular deviations isn't enough in every case. Notice a slew of deviations in order to get the full picture. When you excel at studying nonverbal communication, you will notice that a lot of human nonverbal communication can be deciphered in a variety of ways depending on the situation. Obtain that setting on a regular basis by observing other practices that occur concurrently with the practices you are examining. For example, there are a few misdirection practices that may have ramifications. In any case, when they occur concurrently, you can usually infer that there is some degree of double dealing going on, implying that you should proceed with caution. Analyze. Finally, as you identify those groups of deviations from the first nonpartisan social standard, you can figure out what they mean. You can start following back to see if people are honest or how they are feeling. When you dissect, you get a genuine preview of the thoughts that are going on inside people's heads. You'll want to figure out whether they have a problem in specific settings based on seeing generalized rehashed reactions. You'll want to figure out what scares them. It appears to constantly persuade them to continue pursuing their goals. As you progress through this stage, you will learn more about what is expected to influence or control them, assuming you choose to do so. When to analyze people. Individual analysis is one of those skills that may be put to use in almost any situation. It can be used at work, in close-knit relationships, in governmental matters, religion, and, surprisingly, in everyday life. Because of this adaptability, you may notice that you are always scrutinizing others, which is okay. Remember that your unaware brain already makes judgments about others and their expectations, so you're investigating people in the first place. Now all you're doing is attempting to ensure that those inquiries are made in your consciousness so that you are aware of them. Now we'll look at a few unique and convincing scenarios. When it comes to nurturing, once you've figured out how to analyze others, you can start applying what you've learned to your own children. You might think that a child's brain isn't advanced enough to get a reliable read on, but keep in mind that children's feelings are quite genuine. Basically, they have their own feelings, and while those feelings may not be intended to persuade you as a parent, that does not excuse their feelings in any way. You can grasp what is going on in your child's mind by being able to notice his or her feelings, which will allow you to parent more calmly and efficiently. Seeing someone. When you live with another person, it's all too easy to offend them without realizing it. Repeatedly upsetting another person will elicit some level of hostility, even if it's rarely expressed. When they are uncomfortable or distressed, though, some people find it difficult to examine themselves. This is when the ability to investigate another person comes into play. You'll want to figure out what your accomplice's basic feelings are at the time you start dating, so you can play the role of support. Examine people in the workplace, especially if you collaborate with others. Perceive how your colleagues view you. Past that, you may also work in a field that expects you to have the option to get great readings on somebody in the first place. In any case, regardless of whether they are honest with you, you can tell how they are feeling. If you're an attorney, deconstruct the honesty of your customers and those you're interviewing. If you're a salesperson, indicate whether or not you've been persuaded in your efforts to complete a purchase. When you're working with people in broad daylight, protect yourself. You can tell if you're safe when you can read others, regardless of whether they're undermining or suspicious. This means that you may prepare yourself, regardless of the situation, to ensure that you are always ready to respond. In a meeting, you might discover that observing a questioner's nonverbal communication might help you figure out whether to switch techniques or move on to something new. You'll want to explain how you're being treated, primarily by observing nonverbal communication and other nonverbal signs. When watching introductions, when you're watching a presentation, a speech, or an address, it's easy to fall into the trap of taking everything at face value. After all, why would someone go to the trouble of informing you of a lie? This is because you're succumbing to one of the criteria of influence, the temptation of power. At the end of the day, you trust the individual's speaking authority and hence think they are trustworthy. If all else is equal, try to see the other person for who they are by figuring out how to decipher their nonverbal communication. By finding out how to deconstruct a politician on TV, you can detect if he or she is uneasy or dishonest. When you're competing with another individual, ordinary feelings run high on both sides. When things that were not suggested can be expressed, no one is thinking clearly. However, if you investigate people, you notice when someone is getting passionate about withdrawing. You'll want to pay attention to the indicators that you should separate and try again later to make sure you're not treading on anyone's toes or making matters worse. In self-reflection, when you figured out how to examine others, you can start looking at yourself. This means you may pause and examine your nonverbal communication to sort of register with yourself and figure out what's going on. It can be difficult to realize exactly how you are feeling in some situations, but when you don't have any other options, this is the best way to do so. You can discern your feelings if you can pause and ponder on them. Self-regulation. After you've identified your emotions, you'll self-regulate. You may have the option of entering the way you are feeling upset and reacting accordingly if you are in a heated dispute and find yourself worrying and becoming irritated. However, if you can deconstruct people, you may examine them and determine how they are feeling. This means that if you can see that you're scaring or making someone uncomfortable, you can make the necessary changes to your behavior. Chapter 7: Manipulation through NLP. Neuro-Linguistic programming was developed in the 1970s and is a form of mind control. Many researchers were dealing with new theories of behavior and psychology during this period, which you may learn more about as we go through history. The NLP approach looked to use knowledge and skills that had been gathered, both as a consequence of men who had used hypnosis and mind control in the past. Men like Rasputin, who seemed to use methods so dark and enigmatic that others couldn't fathom how they sought to achieve what they did, have a place in history of mind control. When looking at Rasputin's photographs, his eyes are the feature that stands out the most. He appears to be out of frame, almost as if he's in the same room as you. Rasputin's manipulation and control skills were not well known at the time, but some of his approaches appear to have elements of what we now term NLP mind control. Practitioners of NLP mind manipulation utilize efficient communication as a strategy to create relationships. Despite the fact that NLP guidelines are more focused on techniques than psychology, this type of approach stimulates the human desire to develop an emotional and psychological bond with everyone. Wood, 2006. Strong eye contact, when paired with other words, gestures, or other signals, can put someone under mind control or even put them in a trance. Many people nowadays employ NLP tactics to achieve their objectives. even if the objective is to sell you something for a small profit. Mind control. Mind control techniques are something that can be both appealing and dangerous depending on how they are used. It means different things to different people. These are also assigned to coercive influence, indoctrination, thought change, compulsion, and seduction. All of these terms listed above have common elements, particularly those depicting mental control. Every person alludes to inspiration and expresses or implies control in an individual psyche to take on a specific job. Then, in a reasonable amount of time, we describe it and identify many of its strategies. Following that, we'll ask you who needs to use them. Could you change the minds of others? Can others monitor your psyche? One normal concern is that individuals can control others' minds without getting them. This has increased the frequency with which the term mental control appears in hypotheses in which anything, from states to outsiders, is blamed for controlling our thoughts. The assessments of others can be influenced on a regular and unequivocal basis, making them dance like puppets for each wish. On the other hand, seems unlikely. Techniques of brain control. A few strategies are regularly utilized for mind control. It doesn't occur. There is a cycle that you, as an individual, ought to know about. Allow us to take a look. In this part, we will analyze some certifiable psyche control techniques that are used by normal people in unique interactions, just like gatherings. The demonstration of isolation. Physical removal can be awe-inspiring, but regulators will routinely strive to bind you sanely when a true partition is inconceivable or impractical. This can be developed in a variety of ways, ranging from multi-week courses in the countryside to denouncing your family and companion group. The authoritative objective is another impact of controlling the information stream. Having criticism. Understand that analysis may be used as a detachment instrument. Normally, regulators will go so far as to say they are against other people's terms, condemn the rest of the world, and ensure their own particular dominance. Peer pressure and social proof. People who try to control massive gatherings of people usually utilize social proof and peer pressure to mentally program newcomers. Social proof is a psychological phenomenon in which a few people believe that the actions and feelings of others are appropriate and should be legitimized since everyone does it. This works particularly well when an individual isn't sure what to think, how to carry on, or what to do. Wood, 2020. Numerous people in such conditions will look at what others do and do likewise. How would you prevail with regards to controlling people's minds? Trance induction is a fantastic tool to have. A skilled hypnotherapist could persuade someone to act in response to his suggestion in a matter of seconds. Entrancing can be used for guidance, entertainment, promotion, and even temptation. It is not difficult to become aware of someone who has been entranced for the sake of treatment or entertainment, and even easier to allow the hypnotic specialist to hypnotize them. It takes a distinct, consistent repertoire to captivate people in a conversational environment and persuade them to follow your advice without realizing you're using your special abilities on them. The bewitching of clandestineness and correspondence is what it's called. Top sales representatives, pioneers, and enchantment specialists employ this method to persuade others to do whatever they want. Such hypnotic techniques are so powerful that they appear to manipulate the brain. You might be worried about how this spellbinding mystery works. The absolute first thing you ought to do is connect to the individual you need to enter. This association is classified as an investigation by a few. This condition of similarity with the subject should be protected. This should be possible orally and with the right nonverbal communication. When done effectively, the subject experiences a significant mental bond with a hypnotic. First, expand the announcement status. Once you've located a source and established a rapport with the subject, the next step is to reinforce this sense of assurance and perception, thus broadening any psychological assurances and making the subject more receptive to recommendations. First, create an association. Once you've established a good rapport with the target, it's time to infuse the hidden propositions into his obliviousness, sometimes known as epitomized directions. You inquire about anything you want him to do there. You might also inform him as you are doing during a routine hypnosis session. Being sensitive and explicit about ideas will set the tone for critical reasoning. The safeguards and hindrances of the typical mind will be expanded, and the direct request you send him will be squared. So, once you've gotten them in your spell, how do you propose the subject? You do this with analogies and orders typified. So, what's the significance here? Entrancing images or successions are mesmerizing reports explicitly planned. They use fascinating material and deliver ideas or directives directly to the unaware to get through decisive thinking obstacles. This deceives the audience into thinking we're talking about something trivial when we're actually talking about something else, which is the metaphor's true meaning. Final words. You can now concur with me accordingly. The evaluation that control is everywhere in our regular routines. Even while you sleep, there is a brand somewhere that is looking to unleash their manipulative marketing campaign with the goal of making you spend your money. While you slave away helplessly in front of your boss, there is rarely any guarantee that you will advance. In your own connections, there is presumably somebody who is professing to be your companion, yet is just paying special attention to themselves. It nearly seems like no matter which way you turn, there is somebody holding back to impact your best course of action. This can be very overwhelming. Being controlled doesn't feel better. Realizing that all you thought was valid was a modified reality made by a manipulative individual causes you to feel double-crossed and, occasionally, moronic. You can't help thinking about why you didn't see the warnings and what you might have done any other way. The reality of the situation is that, however shrewd you think you are, there is constantly somebody who accepts they can outmaneuver you. Enter your newly learnt control methods. This book was designed to teach you about manipulation and how to avoid being manipulated, as well as how we can manipulate situations in general to our own favor when need be. You don't need to pause for a minute or two and watch others take control and get what you need when you can do it without anyone else's help. Affecting others to satisfy your desires is well within your capabilities if you disguise and combine the lessons and techniques in this book. It may appear to be a difficult trip, particularly if you are accustomed to offering others what they need and getting nothing as a trade-off, but it isn't. Figuring out how to control individuals isn't something that ought to overwhelm you. It just feels overpowering now, since you are learning this multitude of new things at the same time. With time and practice, the things you have learned will turn out to be natural. You will wind up grinning and being at ease without contemplating it. Work on your nonverbal communication. You'll be surprised at how much more you can learn from people and your surroundings. Turning into an expert controller will take you longer than a couple of days, but it will be worth it. Keep in mind, you are on solid ground. If you've enjoyed this audiobook and you've learned more about the secrets of manipulation, an honest review is always appreciated and will help me reach new listeners just like you who'd like to discover dark psychology.
We appreciate you tuning in to one of our captivating audiobooks. For more immersive experiences, here is another audiobook we're certain you'll enjoy. Don't forget to show your support by liking this video, sharing what you loved about this audiobook in the comments section below, and subscribing for more captivating audiobooks like this. Thanks for being a part of our audiobook community.